Chapter 86. 3 days passed quickly. When Qin Wanru came back from Madame Dowager's yard, she saw Chu Lu standing outside her yard with a middle-aged man. Seeing her coming back, Chu Lu hurried forward. "Miss, this is my father." The middle-aged man came forward and bowed to Qin Wanru, "Second miss. I am Chu Li's father." Qin Wanru's eyes fell on the middle-aged man, who was in his 30s or 40s. He was dressed like an ordinary villager, with his head lowered, and his face could not be seen clearly. However, he was extremely tall, even taller than the average villager. Although he lowered his head, he was not flustered in his behavior. "Are you from the capital city?" Qin Wanru looked him up and down and asked calmly. "Yes, I am from the capital city." The middle-aged man nodded and said. "Why did you come to Jiangzhou?" Qin Wanru looked at him coldly. "I came to Jiangzhou to find someone. I heard that he appeared in Jiangzhou." The middle-aged man heard the question and said quickly. "You and your wife are both from the capital city?" Qin Wanru asked again. "We are." The middle-aged man did not hide it. "Madam asked your daughter to keep an eye on me and report to her about me?" There was no doubt in these words, so Qin Wanru simply avoided these words and asked directly, her eyes shining on the man. "Yes." The middle-aged man lowered his head even more. "Do you know that if I punish your whole family, it will be nothing in Jiangzhou?" Qin Wanru smiled coldly and said with a childish voice, "Ningyuan Army General's mansion is in Jiangzhou. If you want to punish a family, even if you want to kill them, it will be nothing." If it was in the capital city, Qin Huayong was indeed nothing. His official rank was not high, and his official position was not high. There were many high-ranking officials in the capital city who could suppress him. But here in Jiangzhou, Qin Huayong, who had the military power, could deal with a few people without anyone knowing. "Second miss, I really didn't say anything about you. Madam didn't ask much about you either." The middle-aged man panicked and could not stand still. He pulled Chu Lu to kneel down and said anxiously. He had been in Jiangzhou for so many years, of course, he knew that Qin Wanru's words were not to scare him. "If she didn't say anything about me, then what did Madam say? Why do I always ask you to report to me? But I don't know what I've done to make you have so many things to report to Madam." Qin Wanru said coldly. This lowly one. The middle-aged man hesitated and lowered his head. "Tell me." Qin Wanru glanced at the middle-aged man and increased the pressure in her heart unhurriedly. She had threatened him just now. If he was smart, he would certainly know what to do. "Madam. Madam is asking me why I came to Jiangzhou." The middle-aged man did not look stupid. He hesitated for a moment and then said. Although his words were vague, Qin Wanru still heard something and showed a trace of seriousness on her face. "Your business? What business do you have?" "Yes. You are asking me who I am looking for in Jiangzhou. Have you found him? Also, there are some other trivial matters." The middle-aged man's forehead was covered with sweat. He originally thought that she was just a young lady who was not sensible. He did not expect that she would give him so much pressure. What she said was even more shocking. He dared not to say anything useful. However, there were some things that he would never say, whether it was Madame D or the second miss in front of him. "The person you are looking for in Jiangzhou, is it related to Madam?" Qin Wanru's expression did not change. She pondered for a moment and asked. "It has nothing to do with Madam. The person I am looking for in Jiangzhou has nothing to do with Madam. I don't know why Madam cares so much about my business." The middle-aged man was actually very confused. The Madam of General's mansion was inexplicably interested in his family's business. Although she seemed to be interested in second Miss Qin's business, the middle-aged man was also a smart man. He had already found some clues from Madame D's words. As for Madame D's question, he had been delaying or pretending not to understand and answering vaguely. However, according to his feeling, this second miss who suddenly appeared seemed to be a difficult person to deal with. Can you talk about your business? Qin Wanru did not beat around the bush and came straight to the point. The middle-aged man felt that the sweat on his forehead increased. Although this miss grew up in Jiangzhou, she was actually not a miss from a big aristocratic family. However, she was so generous and her questions were all on point. This matter, please forgive me for not telling you all. It is related to some important family affairs of mine. The middle-aged man answered cautiously, this is my personal business and it has nothing to do with others. Why does Madam want to know? Although he answered cautiously, his words were firm. Qin Wanru knew that he would not tell the truth, so she simply changed the topic. This. I don't know either. The middle-aged man shook his head. He really did not know what this matter had to do with Madame D. This matter had nothing to do with Madame D. Could it be related to Madame? Qin Wanru reminded him. She rolled her watery eyes and there was a bit of clarity in them. The person you are looking for, could it be related to Madame? No, impossible. The middle-aged man was stunned and hurriedly shook his head. Why is it impossible? Qin Wanru was curious. This is not possible. It is impossible. It is impossible. The middle-aged man kept shaking his head. In fact, I am looking for two people, not just one person. But Madame is alone, and the miss of Duke Yang's mansion can't be related to my matter. Because he was anxious, the middle-aged man explained again. The miss of Duke Yang's mansion? Qin Wanru playfully bit her pink cherry lips. The middle-aged man's face changed dramatically, and his hands, which were put aside, trembled slightly. You actually know that Madame is the miss of Duke Yang's mansion. In Jiangzhou, most people only know that Madame is a miss from an aristocratic family in the capital city, but they don't know which aristocratic family she is from. You are a farmer, but you are so knowledgeable and clearly know Madame's origin. Have you seen Madame before? I have not seen Madame before. The middle-aged man was a little flustered. Weren't you in the capital city before? Didn't you see Madame when you went out? Qin Wanru stared at the middle-aged man and said coldly. I was just a nobody at that time. How could I have seen Countess Yong? The middle-aged man shook his hands anxiously. But Madame recognized you. Qin Wanru smiled slightly, and her voice was cold and firm. How could it be, impossible? I am just a servant. How could Madame recognize me? The middle-aged man's face changed dramatically, and he stammered. When he finished speaking, his face changed dramatically. He was really panicked when he said something wrong. So, which mansion are you a servant? Qin Wanru immediately caught the loophole in his words and asked coldly. Then her voice became harsh. Are you an escaped slave from an aristocratic family in the capital city? If he was an escaped slave, he would be punished on his face and sent to exile after being caught. No, I am not an escaped slave. I am really looking for someone, for our master. This matter is known by the people in our mansion. The middle-aged man could not hide his panic. He gritted his teeth and had to say a few more words. You are looking for your master. You haven't found him for so many years. I heard from Chu Le that you have been in Jiangzhou for a long time. Are you not going to go back after so many years without any news? Qin Wanru asked one sentence after another. She had asked Chu Le before. They had been in Jiangzhou Prefecture for many years. For so many years, they could not find their master, but they did not go back. Instead, they settled down in Jiangzhou. She had never heard of such a thing. Is it that you have found your master, but you hurt him, so you dare not go back to the mansion? Qin Wanru smiled gently. But the meaning in her words made the confident middle-aged man's face suddenly turn as pale as snow. If this crime was really carried out, he would have no way to live. Second Miss Qin, how could I hurt our master? If I really hurt our master, I will be struck by lightning. But our master has been missing for so many years. When I went out to look for him, the old master said that he would not let me go back until he was found. Now the master has not been found, and the old master is also gone. I don't know what to do. The middle-aged man sobbed and cried. He wiped his tears while crying. Such a big man kneeling on the ground and crying, and thinking of what he said, it was really pitiful. Qing Yu, who was standing aside, felt pity for him. Our master and the miss of Duke Yong's mansion did meet several times. I followed our master at that time. Maybe madam recognized me, so she inquired about our master. But I have been in Jiangzhou for so many years, and I have not found our master. Even if I want to say something, I can't say anything. Even if Madame D asks me again, I can only say the same words. The middle-aged man continued. This time, he did not hide anything. Except the name of his master, he almost told her everything. This kind of thing could be regarded as the secret of a big family, but it had nothing to do with others. Qin Wanru was just a weak girl in the boudoir. It was not good for her to know this kind of thing, and it would even cause trouble and gossip. Does madam really want to know so much? Qin Wanru said slowly. It seems so. I don't know why madam is so persistent. Even if she knows, so what? What's more, now the old master is gone, and no one will worry about the little master. The middle-aged man wiped his tears and said bitterly. Chapter 87. The meaning of these words made the kneeling father and daughter stunned for a moment, but then the middle-aged man shook his head and half raised his head. Second Miss Qin, you are a kind person. Chu Lu has told me that you are a good person. Even if you know that my family is coerced by madam, you don't blame Chu Lu. Chu Lu is good with Second Mississippi. Second Miss, I want to follow you. Chu Lu also raised her tearful face and cried. Isn't it good to stay together as a family? Qin Wanru looked at the middle-aged man with unclear eyes. His face looked very ordinary and would not be conspicuous in the crowd. Second Miss, on one hand, I have to look for master, on the other hand, I have to work. My wife is sick, and I can't support so many children. Originally, I planned to buy them out one by one. When I find master and have money, I will see if master can bestow them back to me. The middle-aged man said bitterly. It could be seen that what he said was true, and his eyes turned red. The meaning of these words was both loyalty to his master and love for his daughter. But thinking of his current situation, anyone who heard it would feel that this was the only way. He was a servant. Even if he brought money to find his master, he had been looking for 10 years. How could he have money? He had no choice but to sell his daughter to survive. If they stayed together, no one in the family could survive. If they sold their daughter to a good family, they could live well. Qing Yu, give him 10 taels of silver. Qin Wanru looked at the middle-aged man's face deeply and said after a moment of silence. Yes, miss. Qing Yu hurried back to the room to get the silver. Take the silver and move. Don't let madam find you again. As for Chu Lu, you can stay. But I don't keep idle people or disloyal people around me. Qin Wanru's deep eyes fell on Chu Lu. If you can't do it, you'd better go down the mountain with me. The silver can be my support. Miss. I am willing to follow you. I will follow you in the future. Chu Lu was smart and said with tears in her eyes. She was really grateful to Qin Wanru. In fact, she didn't know what happened to her father. Seeing that Qin Wanru didn't blame her and even asked Qing Yu to give her money, she felt sad and sad. She really wanted to show her loyalty to Qin Wanru. She hadn't been in the mansion for a long time, so she didn't have much contact with Qin Wanru. She couldn't say that she had any feelings for Qin Wanru, but she was really moved at this time. After that, he kowtowed heavily to Qin Wanru 3 times, and each kowtow was made with sincerity. "Second miss, don't worry. I'll move after I go back. I won't let madam find me again. From now on, Chu Lu will follow you." The middle-aged man wiped his tears and said decisively. Qin Yu came out from the inner room, gave the silver to Chu Li's father, and then stepped aside. "How can you avoid the madam's inquiries? In Jiangzhou, the madam's words are still very important." Qin Wanru frowned and asked. "Second miss, don't worry. I heard that the madam of the mansion seems to be on bad terms with the general recently. She is busy taking care of herself and doesn't have much time to take care of me. I'll move after I go back and won't tell the neighbors. She won't find me in a short time. I'm just worried about Chu Lu." Chu Li's father's thought was very clear, but he hesitated when talking about Chu Lu. He could avoid Madame D, but Chu Lu who stayed in the general's mansion couldn't avoid Madame D. "I will protect my woman. As long as she is really loyal, I won't let anyone bully her," Qin Wanru said gently, and her eyes fell on Chu Li's father thoughtfully. He was a very smart person. He could actually see the current situation of Madame D in the general's mansion. Qin Wanru believed that the people in the mansion were not talkative people. They would not talk about Madame D with a random person. He was careful to find out. He came to her mansion 3 times and could find out the situation of the master of the inner court. This person was not simple. "Thank you so much, Second Mississippi. I'll leave now." Chu Li's father stood up and wiped his tears. He looked up at Qin Wanru for the first time. After a short pause, he looked at Chu Lu reluctantly and then left sadly. He didn't even know if he could see her again. Chu Lu looked at his back sadly and sobbed uncontrollably. "Go and see your father off," Qin Wanru said as she turned and walked inside. Chu Lu was stunned for a moment, and then she was overjoyed. She kowtowed to Qin Wanru heavily, stood up and chased after her father. "Miss, this." Qin Yu looked at her back and felt a little uneasy. She turned and followed Qin Wanru back to the courtyard. When they were in the room, Qin Yu made a new cup of tea for Qin Wanru. She stood aside and wanted to say something. Qin Wanru took a sip of tea and put it down. She looked at Qin Yu and asked with a smile, "Qin Yu, do you have anything to ask?" "Miss, can Chu Lu be trusted in the future?" Qin Yu heard the question and asked hurriedly. "Temporarily put it in a place where it can be used, but we still need to check it carefully for a while." Qin Wanru thought for a moment and said, "Is what her father said true?" Qin Yu still had doubts. She thought Chu Lu was trustworthy. After all, she and her family were indebted to Chu Lu, but Qin Yu still didn't dare to take it lightly. It should be true. He is a loyal servant. After so many years, he is still looking for him. Qin Wanru sighed and said meaningfully, he even doesn't care about his own daughter. He was a smart person, and a very smart person at that. With just a few sentences, he knew what to say and how to say it to make people feel pity for him and not feel disgusted. If such a person was dedicated to doing some work, it would be impossible for him to not be able to raise his own child. However, he fell into such a situation now. She sighed but also felt that he was admirable. However, no matter how much she admired him, Qin Wanru wouldn't be a good person and let others plot against her. "Miss, you mean what he said is true? But who would be looking for him for so many years?" Qin Yu asked in surprise. "That master should be dead by now. Otherwise, it is impossible to find him for so long." Qin Wanru shook her head. In fact, she also felt strange, but this was the matter of others' mansion and had nothing to do with her. Madame D should be very concerned about this matter, and might even want to get Chu Lu to live with her and Qin Yuru. But she didn't expect that she would be the first one, so this person was sent to her. Therefore, she tried every means to make her drive her out or not let her stay with her. After that, she tried to find an excuse to ask Chu Li's father about something, which should be about his master. However, Chu Li's father was smart. He not only didn't reveal anything, but also attracted her attention. This matter had nothing to do with her, but she had an indescribable wonderful feeling. Somehow, she felt pity for this father and daughter. Chu Lu came back very quickly. She came back while wiping her tears. After coming back, she entered the room and kowtowed to Qin Wanru 3 times. Qin Wanru asked Qin Yu to help her up. Do you know anything about your father? Qin Wanru took the medical book and asked casually while reading. This servant doesn't know about father's matters. Father has never mentioned it to this servant's sisters. This servant didn't expect father to have such a secret. This servant used to hate father, thinking that he couldn't be a good father. Chu Lu cried. She really didn't know anything about her father before, so she always felt that her father was useless. Your father is a loyal servant. Qin Wanru sighed and didn't continue. Go and wash your face. Yes, miss. Chu Lu nodded and said respectfully. Just now, her father repeatedly told her that since she had entered Ningyuan Army General's mansion and was protected by Second Miss Qin, she must be loyal to Second Miss Qin and remember not to betray her master. Qin Yu took Chu Lu to wash. Qin Wanru's eyes fell on the book, but she felt that the words in front of her seemed to jump away by themselves. The moment when Chu Li's father's eyes fell on her face flashed in her mind. He paused for a moment. It was a very strange feeling. It seemed that at that moment, the middle-aged man was a little confused, but this confusion soon floated away. Did she see it wrong or did she misunderstand? She always felt that this look was quite meaningful. Her heart also thumped at that time, as if something slipped through her heart, but then it was gone. She reached out and rubbed her forehead. She always felt that some things in the last life were fragmented. In a daze, she seemed to be able to grasp something instinctively, but it seemed that she couldn't grasp anything at the moment. In the next few days, Qin Wanru still lived as usual, but Chu Lu gradually became more and more important. Qin Wanru also asked her to run errands for some things that she didn't want to be known by others. When she really used Chu Lu, she found that Chu Lu was smart and even decisive sometimes. Although she was a second-class servant girl, she didn't have stage fright in her behavior. This was a surprise for Qin Wanru. She now had too few people she could use, but she didn't dare to use people in the mansion at ease because she hadn't been in contact with them. Xiao Xuanzi stopped Chu Lu when she went to get the food basket. Chu Lu originally thought that he was a little lecher and didn't dare to bring him to Qin Wanru, but Xiao Xuanzi stopped her so she could only bring him to Qin Yu. When Qin Yu saw it was Xiao Xuanzi, she pulled Xiao Xuanzi to the side to talk. After squeezing in the water tank once, they could be regarded as old acquaintances. Xiao Xuanzi, why do you come to our miss? Qin Yu looked around and stopped to ask. Miss had told her not to let others know the existence of Xiao Xuanzi, so Qin Yu was very careful. Our master is sick. Xiao Xuanzi was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. When he pulled Qin Yu, it was like seeing a family member. His eyes turned red, and he reached out to pull her inside again. Isn't your prince always sick? Qin Yu heard it was about the young prince, so she immediately answered carefully. In her view, he looked so pale, so naturally he had always been sick. This time is more serious, because he was too tired that time, and it happened on the day when Ningyuan Army General got married. Xiao Xuanzi was afraid that Qin Yu didn't understand, so he explained in more detail. What happened that day? Qin Yu didn't understand. That, our master was even more sick that day, but he didn't want to take medicine now, so he wanted to ask Second Miss Qin to go and have a look. Xiao Xuanzi said anxiously. My miss doesn't know how to treat a patient. Qin Yu said nervously, for fear that the fact that her miss knew how to treat a patient would be leaked out. With such a high status, if something happened, her miss couldn't afford it. I didn't ask your miss to treat a patient for our master, but I asked your miss to persuade our master. I think our master has a good relationship with your miss. Xiao Xuanzi clenched his fist, looked around, and whispered to Qing Yu's ear. Chapter 88. What? Your prince is so sick. Qing Yu panicked. He hasn't woken up yet. If something happened to our prince, it would be terrible. Xiao Xuanzi stamped his feet anxiously. Wait a minute, I'll go to find my miss right away. Qing Yu didn't dare to delay and said hurriedly. She asked Xiao Xuanzi to wait here and turned back to go out. Seeing her face changed, Chu Lu didn't dare to ask more. Miss, Xiao Xuanzi's master is sick and hasn't eaten for a day. When Qing Yu came in, Qin Wanru was picking out pieces of well-clipped maple leaves from the book. She planned to use them to make maple leaf toothpicks. Hearing what Qing Yu said, the maple leaf in her hand, which was trimming, was immediately pierced by the scissors. What happened? Qin Wanru raised her head. I don't know. Xiao Xuanzi came to ask you to have a look. Qing Yu said. Let's go and have a look. Qin Wanru put down the scissors and maple leaves, lifted the hem of her dress and walked out. She met Chu Lu, who was carrying a food basket. Miss, are you still going out? Chu Lu put down the food basket and asked. I'll talk to Qing Yu and eat later. Clean up the maple leaves in the room. Qin Wanru said casually. Yes, miss. Chu Lu answered and stepped aside to make way for Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru hurried out and Qing Yu ran quickly to catch up with her. She led the way in front and soon found Xiao Xuanzi with Qin Wanru. Second Miss Qin, I. Xiao Xuanzi was so excited that he almost cried when he saw Qin Wanru. Let's go and have a look at your master. Qin Wanru whispered. If Chu Luchen really had an accident in Jiangzhou, the whole Jiangzhou would be in trouble. With his identity, the one who was high up in the capital city, he had to do something more high-profile to make up for it. This situation might be equal to assassinating the king and killing the emperor. Otherwise, he couldn't convince the people in the world and he might even be criticized in the history books. If it weren't for his young age, he would be the one sitting on the throne right now. Strictly speaking, he was the legitimate crown prince. It was also because of this reason that even though the current emperor had several princes, none of them were crowned as crown prince. The courtiers all adopted a wait-and-see attitude. If something happened to Chu Luchen at this time, the whole country would be in turmoil if the emperor didn't push out a few scapegoats. The scapegoats would be the officials in Jiangzhou, and Qin Huayong would bear the brunt. The yard was still the same yard, but the big lounge chair outside was gone. Xiao Xuanzi took Qin Wanru into the house, turned the 9-fold screen, and entered the inner room. Seeing Chu Luchen lying on the bed with a pale face, Qin Wanru panicked a little. Nothing must happen to him. If something were to happen to him, Qin Huayong would definitely be implicated. It was even possible that his entire clan would be exterminated. She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and reached out to hold his hand that was outside the quilt. She calmed herself down and carefully felt his pulse. His pulse was heavy and heavy, as if it was difficult to move even an inch. Qin Wanru knew he was not well. Qin Wanru opened her eyes and saw a bowl of medicine on the table beside her. The medicine was cold, without any heat. Why did you give your master such a cold medicine? Qin Wanru reached out and touched the bowl of medicine. As expected, it was cold, and her face couldn't help but turn pale. Second miss, it's my master who refused to drink the medicine. The medicine was left here to cool down. The stove has been boiling new medicine. I'll go and get a bowl of hot medicine right now. Xiao Xuanzi took the bowl of medicine and cried, since this morning, my master refused to drink medicine and couldn't eat. Who prescribed this medicine? Qin Wanru frowned tightly. So it was not that the medicine was not good, but Chu Luchen didn't intend to drink it. It was prescribed by the master of Jingxin Monastery. It's quite suitable to use, but I just don't want to drink it. Xiao Xuanzi tried all kinds of methods, but Chu Luchen just ignored him. In desperation, he thought of Qin Wanru. In Jiangzhou, only the second Miss Qin had an unusual relationship with his master. Xiao Xuanzi was desperate to turn to any doctor he could find. You go and get another bowl of medicine. Hearing that it was prescribed by the master of Jingxin Monastery, Qin Wanru approved of it. Sometimes when she saw the master of Jingxin Monastery use medicine, although she felt that it was not as delicate as her Mingqiu nun, it was good in general. Yes, I'll go and get it right now. Xiao Xuanzi retreated. Qin Wanru held Chu Liuchen's hand again. Chu Liuchen's hand was so big that he could almost hold both of her hands when he stretched it out. Looking at Chu Liuchen's tightly closed eyes, Qin Wanru stretched out her sharp nails and pinched Chu Liuchen's thumb and index finger hard without any hesitation. She used a lot of strength. Ah! The person on the bed screamed in pain, and his long eyelashes fluttered twice. Chu Luchen opened his eyes, and there was a chill in his light brown eyes, a kind of coldness that kept people thousands of miles away. He fixed his eyes on Qin Wanru, without any warmth or expression. Seeing his expression, Qin Yu was so scared that she hurriedly lowered her head and felt anxious. Chu Luchen was so sick that he could only lie on the bed, but he still gave people a chill and panic from the spine. You need to take medicine when you are sick. If you don't take medicine, how can you get well? Qin Wanru saw a small table beside the bed, took it and sat down, and then put his hand down. Chu Luchen looked at Qin Wanru coldly, and his thin lips were tightly pressed, without a trace of blood. The coldness that seemed to have no vitality was more strange than the coldness in the past, which made people feel numb all over, and the temperature of the whole room dropped by a few degrees. Xiao Xuanzi will bring the medicine in a moment. Take a little, and then take some medicine before you eat. Qin Wanru seemed not to see Chu Liuchen's expressionless face and gloomy eyes. She reached out to hold his wrist and felt his pulse. Just like before, he didn't faint at all, but just didn't want to open his eyes. I don't want to eat it. Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on Qin Wanru coldly, and this atmosphere made Qin Yu lower her head more and more, not daring to move. Why don't you want to eat it? Qin Wanru opened her eyes and raised her smiling face. Her cheeks were rosy, which made her small white face more attractive. The corners of her eyes were slightly raised, showing a kind of natural charm. However, she had not grown up yet, so she still looked a little childish and not obviously charming. Your skin color is so good. Chu Luchen whispered. No one expected that he suddenly raised his hand and touched Qin Wanru's little face. The soft and warm feeling of the bottom of his hand was very comfortable and lively, which made him stunned for a moment. His long eyelashes fluttered twice, and it seemed that he couldn't come back to his senses. Qin Wanru didn't notice that he would reach out to pinch her face, and looked at him in astonishment. She saw that his expressionless face gradually became lazy under her eyes, and his delicate and exquisite facial features immediately became vivid. The spirit of the ink landscape painting was slowly injected into the beautiful young man's lifeless face. Yes, that kind of expressionless face was a kind of lifeless face. It's really good. Chu Luchen said. He stretched out his hand again, and under Qin Wanru's stunned eyes, he slightly squinted and pinched Qin Wanru again, and the smile on his pale lips became more obvious. You. Qin Wanru slapped his hand hard. She could tell that Chu Luchen touched her unconsciously last time, but this time he did it on purpose. She used a lot of strength this time, but she didn't hit Chu Liuchen's hand. His hand actually avoided her, and Chu Luchen showed a young man's tired expression on his face. Sir, you finally woke up, sir. Xiao Xuanzi came in with a bowl of hot medicine in his hand. Seeing the vivid expression on Chu Liuchen's face, he was so excited that his tears were about to fall, and the bowl in his hand almost fell down. I don't take medicine. Chu Luchen turned around and turned his face inside. Sir, if you don't take medicine, how can you get better? If you... Xiao Xuanzi began to persuade him earnestly again, and put the medicine on the table with a face full of worry. Annoying, go down. Chu Luchen was not happy, and said coldly with his back facing them. Sir. Xiao Xuanzi's voice was long, and he was really anxious. He didn't take medicine for a day, and his body seemed to be getting worse, which made him anxious. Sir, go down, do you want to make me angry? Chu Liuchen's voice was not only cold, but also a little bit angry, which immediately interrupted Xiao Xuanzi's words. Sir. Xiao Xuanzi was so anxious that his eyes turned red. Although he said, Sir, in a very low voice to Chu Luchen, he looked at Qin Wanru with a face full of hope. Xiao Xuanzi, Qin you go down first. Qin Wanru thought for a while and waved her hand. Miss. Xiao Xuanzi breathed a sigh of relief, but Qin Yu panicked. I'm fine, you go down with Xiao Xuanzi. Qin Wanru took a deep breath and thought it was better to let Qin Yu go down with Xiao Xuanzi. What she would do later might not make Chu Luchen happy, and might even make him angry. She was afraid that Chu Luchen might vent his anger on Qin Yu when he was angry. Yes, miss. Seeing that Qin Wanru insisted, Qin Yu had to leave, and turned to walk out of the room. When she reached the door, she looked inside worriedly, because she was still worried. Qin Wanru waved to her again, and Qin Yu retreated to the outer room. Child, why don't you want to take the medicine? There must be a reason, right? After everyone in the room left, Qin Wanru wrapped the handkerchief in her hand, stood up, picked up the bowl of medicine from the table, walked to the bed and sat down again. She blew the medicine in her hand, squinted at the arrogant boy on the bed and asked. It's none of your business. Chu Luchen sneered unhappily, and his voice was full of anger. I don't want to care about it, but I have something to ask you, child. If you just leave like this, I have no place to ask others to help me. Qin Wanru frowned and said. She pursed her pink lips and looked a little embarrassed. It's related to Empress Dowager's illness. I don't feel at ease to let others do it, and I'm afraid that others will take my credit. It's really difficult. Chapter 89. What's the matter? After a long while, she heard Chu Liuchen's question. Qin Wanru was relieved. It was good that he could talk to people. She looked at Chu Liuchen's back with a smile and said, Fragrance of July. When she read the medical book that day, she just felt a little familiar. Later, she remembered that Empress Dowager was not in good health and had a disease of hemoptysis due to deficiency of qi. One of the main medicines was often used, which was Fragrance of July. Because of the water and soil problems, there was no Fragrance of July in the capital city. The growing environment of this medicine was suitable for Jiangzhou, but it was rare. It could only be found by chance, and it was not enough every year. What do you mean? Chu Luchen turned his head and sat up slightly. Qin Wanru hurriedly took a cushion and put it behind him. Qin Wanru was not surprised by his reaction. In her last life, she had heard that the Empress Dowager in the palace loved her grandson the most and liked him more than the princes born by the current emperor. Because of the Empress Dowager's love, Prince Chen, who could be regarded as the deposed crown prince, was also arrogant in the palace. No one dared to provoke him easily. It was certain that he had a good relationship with Empress Dowager. The medicine bowl in her hand was not so hot anymore. Qin Wanru reached out and handed it to Chu Luchen. She blinked her clear eyes and moved her eyes from his face to the medicine bowl. She blinked her watery eyes and gave him a signal. The soup was thick and choking. It was obviously not tasty. Qin Wanru leaned back with disgust. In fact, she was most afraid of drinking this kind of medicine. Chu Luchen was patted on the head. He didn't know whether it was Qin Wanru's words or the disgust on his face. He took the bowl and drank it up. After drinking it, he handed the bowl to Qin Wanru and patted her head again. He squinted at her and said, "You are so useless." Qin Wanru silently took the bowl and put it aside. She secretly curled her lips. He threw a tantrum and didn't drink the medicine. He even asked such a young girl to coax him. Now he had the nerve to despise her for being useless. Have you found the fragrance of July with a certain age? Chu Luchen grabbed the handkerchief from Qin Wanru's hand, wiped his mouth carelessly, and threw it back to Qin Wanru. His expression was extremely natural, as if the handkerchief in Qin Wanru's hand was originally his. His temper was really arrogant and awkward. Qin Wanru speechlessly looked at her handkerchief, which was smeared with a large piece of dirt. She simply rubbed it in her palm and pretended that she didn't see it. She nodded and said, I found a good fragrance of July. The older it was, the better the effect. No matter why Chu Luchen appeared in Jiangzhou, fragrance of July must be one of his purposes. Where? How many of them are there? Chu Luchen asked. There are about 5 of them, and they are all about 100 years old. Qin Wanru said with a smile. Where? It's in Jingxin Monastery. Qin Wanru didn't hide it. This was actually a gift from the master of Jingxin Monastery. It was a gift for Qin Wanru as an elder, but it was still in the hands of the master of Jingxin Monastery for the time being. Abbess of Jingxin Monastery? Chu Luchen touched his chin playfully. Yes, it's the master of Jingxin Monastery. Qin Wanru nodded and said affirmatively. Then her watery eyes flickered, and her eyes were glittering. Child, if you get it, don't forget to give me a great merit. Since there was such a chance to get credit, Qin Wanru wouldn't forget to do it for herself. Alright, I got it. I'll give it back to you. Chu Luchen said impatiently. He reached under his pillow and casually took out an object and threw it to Qin Wanru like throwing rubbish. Qin Wanru subconsciously took it and looked at it. It turned out to be her seal. She raised her head and looked at his messy pillow. She was speechless. Those who didn't know would think that this seal was something very important to him. He even put it under his pillow when he was lying on the bed. However, Qin Wanru was still very happy to get her seal back. She stood up and bowed sideways. She said respectfully, Thank you, child. Qin Wanru, you still owe me a lot. This is not the end. Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. His handsome face was gentle and elegant at this time. Even though his face looked pale without a trace of blood, he was still outstanding, like pearls and jade. His eyes under his long eyelashes were deep. Yes, thank you for your kindness. Qin Wanru helplessly bowed again. This Prince Chen was really vengeful. He was so sick, but he still cared so much about her and didn't want to suffer any loss. She also didn't understand why this noble prince, who had a limitless future, would make life difficult for a little girl like her. He always wanted to take the lead in everything. Chu Luchen snorted weakly this time, which was a response to Qin Wanru. Then he squinted at Qin Wanru and looked at the small stool in front of the bed. Qin Wanru understood and had to sit down on the stool again. She actually wanted to leave. Bring the food up, I'm hungry. Chu Luchen shouted at the door angrily. Qin Wanru looked sideways and saw a familiar cloth corner. Xiao Xuanzi was hiding there. He was worried that her talking to Chu Luchen would irritate Prince Chen. Yes, yes. I'll bring it right away. Hearing that Chu Luchen took the initiative to ask for a meal, Xiao Xuanzi was overjoyed and hurried in from the door with a smile on his face. He didn't expect that the second Miss Qin had such an ability. She not only let him drink the medicine but also let him have a meal. He was really afraid of messing things up before. Have you been listening at the door for a while? Xiao Xuanzi's smile froze, and then he shook his hands. No, sir, I just came here and didn't hear anything. You really didn't hear anything? Chu Luchen asked gloomily. Xiao Xuanzi didn't dare to lie this time. He lowered his head and said timidly, Sir, I was worried about you. I just listened a little, really just a little. Just listened a little. Chu Luchen smiled. His smile was gentle, but there was a chilling feeling hidden in it. Yes, only one ear. Xiao Xuanzi stammered. Since you only listen to one ear, then why do you want the other ear? Chop it off. Chu Liuchen's curved lips smiled more brightly. Xiao Xuanzi trembled and his teeth chattered. He knelt down with a plop sound. Sir, please spare my life. Please spare my life. Well, go down and serve the meal. Remember to listen to 2 ears next time. Chu Luchen reached out and patted the corner of his quilt. He was in a good mood and decided not to scare his personal little eunuch anymore. Yes, sir. At this time, Xiao Xuanzi also realized that his master was joking with him. He smiled happily and hurried down to ask people to serve the meal. Qin Wanru helplessly looked at the beautiful boy who was complacent in front of her. His mischievous look was really not like the lifeless look just now. The meal had already been served. There were 4 dishes and 1 soup, which were all very suitable for a sick person like him to eat. It was very light. Chu Luchen seemed to have no appetite. He just picked a few dishes with his chopsticks and couldn't eat anymore. He looked up and saw Qin Wanru, who was looking at him eagerly. He was happy. Have you eaten? Qin Wanru shook her head. She was waiting to eat when Xiao Xuanzi came over. Seeing him eating, she also felt hungry. She bit her pink cherry lips, puffed up and lowered her head. She really felt hungry. She watched him eat, but she was late for the meal. Moreover, these dishes looked good. Do you want to eat some? Chu Luchen said playfully. He suddenly felt that this idea was good. He said to Xiao Xuanzi, who was serving beside him, prepare a set of bowls and chopsticks for Qin Wanru. I will eat with her. Master. Xiao Xuanzi froze for a moment. His master disliked eating with others the most. Even with the Empress Dowager, he rarely ate with her. Hurry up. Chu Luchen squinted at Qin Wanru and said. His eyes fell from her white skin to her pink cherry lips. Because she heard his words, she bit her upper lip. Her lower lip looked flat, and her cheeks were bulging. If 2 bubbles were drawn on her cheeks, it would really look like a bulging goldfish's mouth. This was really amusing. He also liked the color of her lips. Compared with his usual pale lip color, her lip color made him feel very energetic at first sight. What an enviable lip color. Feeling that Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on her face, Qin Wanru hurriedly put down her upper lip that she had bitten. Xiao Xuanzi gave her a new set of bowls and chopsticks, and filled a small bowl of rice for her. Looking at the dishes, Qin Wanru decided not to refuse. He didn't look like someone who could be refused. Anyway, she was hungry. Today she could be regarded as a meritorious minister. The consequence of not refusing was that Qin Wanru picked up the bowl and enjoyed it very much. When she finished, she found that Chu Luchen had been staring at her in a daze. Qin Wanru blinked her eyes and didn't understand why he was looking at her. She subconsciously reached out to wipe her face with a handkerchief, and then saw Xiao Xuanzi's almost twisted face, and Chu Luchen laughing so hard that he almost overturned the bowl in his hand. Under the long and curly eyelashes, a pair of big black and white eyes blinked. Qin Wanru followed Xiao Xuanzi's eyes and looked at her handkerchief with a little confusion. She found the traces of medicine that Chu Luchen had just wiped on the handkerchief. She was so shy that her face suddenly turned red. She threw away the handkerchief in her hand and subconsciously reached out to cover the place where she wiped. Then she stood up and walked out. Chu Luchen must have done it on purpose. This person was really evil. He led her to wipe the dirty handkerchief on her face. Needless to say, there must be dark brown stains on her face. Behind her came Chu Liuchen's uncontrolled laughter. Miss. Qin Yu had been obediently waiting outside. Seeing Qin Wanru covering her face, she was shocked and hurried over. Handkerchief. Qin Wanru secretly gritted her teeth. Qin Yu hurriedly handed the handkerchief in her hand to Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru stretched out her hand and wiped her face fiercely. While walking out, she felt the laughter behind her was more and more disgusting. This person had predicted her subconscious behavior and led her to smear her face. He was so cunning. Or he had already thought of this when she was eating and was waiting for her to make a fool of herself. Qin Wanru hurried back to Jingshin Monastery, but she didn't go back to her yard. Instead, she went directly to Mingxiu Nun's hut. She had to report something to Mingxiu Nun in advance. Chapter 90. The door of Mingxiu Nun's hut seemed to be locked all the time, for fear that others would disturb her meditation. Now Qin Wanru was familiar with the way. She took down the lock, pushed the door and walked in. In the middle of the hut, there was actually a small Buddha hall, in which a small Buddha statue was enshrined. The Buddha statue was the image of the thousand-hand Guanyin, vivid and kind, and there was a kind of indescribable dignified and noble dignity. At first glance, people would feel sincere from the bottom of their hearts. There were only 3 incense sticks in the Buddha hall, which were very faint. On the rush cushion in front, Mingxiu Nun was chanting in a low voice with her eyes closed, looking very pious. Qin Wanru took another rush cushion from the side and bowed respectfully to the Buddha in it beside Mingxiu Nun. Being reborn made her more respectful to the Buddha. After bowing, she put her palms together and quietly listened to Mingxiu Nun chanting in a low voice. After a while, Mingxiu Nun opened her eyes and looked at Qin Wanru with a smile. "Why are you so early today?" Usually, Qin Wanru would take a rest after the meal before coming. "I have something to tell you." Qin Wanru turned the rush cushion to another direction, looked at Mingxiu Nun, and said solemnly. "What's the matter?" Mingxiu Nun asked in surprise. "Nun, do you still remember that the master of Jingshin Monastery gave me 5 fragrance of July last time?" Qin Wanru asked. Mingxiu Nun nodded with a smile. "I didn't take it at that time, and said that I would leave it with the master of Jingshin Monastery. This time I heard that a noble from the capital city came, and these several fragrance of July were given to that noble in the name of Jingshin Monastery." Qin Wanru said while choosing her words. "Given to a noble in the capital city?" Mingxiu Nun asked, "Why not send it yourself?" "These fragrance of July were originally from Jingshin Monastery. If I give it to a noble in the capital city, I think it's better to use the name of Jingshin Monastery. On the one hand, I can't have such a precious gift myself, and on the other hand, I can leave a name for Jingshin Monastery in the noble's place, or I can leave a reliance for Jingshin Monastery." Qin Wanru said softly, but her eyes were deep in the place where Mingxiu Nun could not see. She was not trying to be mysterious. In her previous life, she heard that Jingshin Monastery was destroyed. At that time, she was already in the capital city. She heard this news from Qin Yuru and Madame D by chance. She was not clear about the details. She only said that there seemed to be thieves in Jingshin Monastery and they were arrested by the people in the monastery. Then they were sent to prison. But later on, he heard that something happened and was sent to the capital again. At that time, she was trapped in the backyard and didn't even have a useful person around her. She didn't know what happened after that. But no matter what, she didn't want to see the nunnery that had saved so many people get into trouble, and she didn't want anything to happen to the benevolent Jingshin Monastery master and Mingxiu Nun. "Nobleman?" Mingxiu Nun frowned, obviously not knowing who she was talking about. "It's a sick nobleman. Now he should be asking Jingshin Monastery master to treat him. He came from the capital city." Qin Wanru couldn't reveal Chu Liuchen's identity too much, so she could only say it implicitly. According to these few pieces of news and Chu Liuchen's own request to the master of Jingshin Monastery, this matter was very likely to be true. "Since you're willing to entrust this favor to Jingshin Monastery, I'm grateful." Mingxiu Nun was not a pedantic person. She smiled slightly and accepted Qin Wanru's kindness. She didn't ask how Qin Wanru knew this matter. Next, Mingxiu Nun stood up and took Qin Wanru to the next wing room to teach her. Chu Luchen was in a good mood when he saw Qin Wanru leave with her hands covering her little face. Later, he even added a little bit of rice. Although it was just a little bit of rice, it had already made Xiao Xuanzi excited and affirmed his behavior today. Fortunately, second Miss Qin came over. Otherwise, how could the prince eat so obediently? Every time the prince lost his temper, it would be a mess and the whole imperial palace would be alarmed. But this time, it passed quietly, and the prince seemed to be in a good mood. After the meal, Chu Luchen lay down in a good mood. Thinking of the brown medicine stain on Qin Wanru's face, he couldn't help laughing again. He was not in a good mood, so he really fell asleep after laughing for a while. He slept for a long time and didn't get up until the evening. Hearing the sound inside, Xiao Xuanzi hurried to lift the bed curtain and reached out to touch his forehead. The temperature on his forehead was normal, which made him feel relieved. Seeing Chu Luchen actually sat up by himself and was about to get up, he hurriedly said, "Sir, it's dark now, where are you going? Have a good rest first. I'm going to see Jingxin Monastery Master to ask for the 5 fragrance of July." Chu Luchen said with a lazy posture. "Sir, isn't it a little too late for you to do this? Wait for tomorrow, Jingxin Monastery Master still has to give you a follow-up examination tomorrow, it's a good time for you to talk about this." Xiao Xuanzi looked at the sky outside and persuaded. Chu Liuchen's gaze also fell outside the window. He slept for a long time just now, and the sky actually became dark at this time. "Then let's go tomorrow." Chu Luchen nodded, leaned on the cushion that Xiao Xuanzi brought, and found a comfortable position. "Sir, do you feel better?" Xiao Xuanzi handed a cup of warm water to Chu Luchen and asked with concern. Chu Luchen took it, took a sip, and then raised his cold eyes. "The medicine is not bad, it has some effect." "That's great. I'll stay in Jiangzhou for a while and let the abbess help you recuperate. Then, I'll find the person mentioned by Dr. Qi. At that time, I'll be cured." Xiao Xuanzi's eyes lit up, and a big stone in his heart was loosened. "Not necessarily, it's hard to say until the person is found." Chu Luchen slightly narrowed his eyes, no longer paying attention to this matter, and changed a topic. "Is there any news from the capital city?" Counting the days, it should be time to trigger the trap he set. This time leaving the capital city was not as simple as leaving the capital city. "I'm about to report to you, there's news that Empress Dowager was angry and punished Empress." Empress Dowager and many knelt outside Empress Dowager's palace of benevolent and peaceful for 4 hours. After that, even the emperor's plea was rejected by Empress Dowager, and she asked them to find you, saying that they must make you leave in anger. After Xiao Xuanzi sorted out the news he had just received, he reported. Chu Luchen leaned back thoughtfully, looked at the bottom of the curtain above, and silently showed a trace of hostility on his lips. What did they say? Although he didn't say it clearly, Xiao Xuanzi knew that he was talking about the current emperor, and hurriedly said, "They only said that they persuaded Empress Dowager, and then reprimanded Empress Dowager N.S. After that, they didn't say anything, but only said that they would let you go as soon as possible. It seems that there will be an imperial edict coming soon." Chu Luchen said coldly. The world was a game, and the country was a chess piece. He had long been in the game. Chess pieces came one after another, and now it was just a step by step. What, that family moved. Madame D stood up and walked around the room for a few times, and her face was livid. She finally found a little clue, and now it was going to disappear. It was all Qin Wanru's fault. Yes, they moved. I've asked around, and no one knew where they moved. They only said that they moved overnight, and the next morning, they were gone. They didn't move some heavy things, and just took some simple luggage and left. Nanny Zhou also frowned tightly. She came from Duke Yong's mansion, and if it weren't for her, Madame D wouldn't be able to recognize him. After all, how could a miss from an aristocratic family recognize a servant? Where's Chulu? Madame D turned back and sat in front of the table. She slammed her hand on the table, and the teacup on the table couldn't stand the force and fell to the ground, making a clear sound of breaking. Seeing Madame D's face, Nanny Zhou didn't dare to pick up the broken pieces immediately, and answered hurriedly, "She is still in Jingxin Monastery, with 2nd Mississippi. This bitch still keeps this girl. What does she want to do?" Madame D was a little panicked. "Does she know anything?" "Madam, don't worry, 2nd Miss can't know anything. She was still young at that time, and she was an ignorant child. So many years have passed, if old grandma didn't say that you were not 2nd Miss's birth mother, 2nd Miss still wouldn't know about it." Nanny Zhou comforted her. This old beggar can't even protect herself, and she still dares to meddle in other people's business. But even if she meddled, so what? She doesn't know what happened at that time. Speaking of this, Madame D was so angry that her teeth were itching. She gritted her teeth, and a bit of viciousness flashed in her eyes. How could this old woman be fine? She had given her such a heavy drug, but she could still be saved. If this old woman was dead, Shui Rulan wouldn't be able to enter the door at this time. Thinking of the resentment, her eyes bulged, and the gloominess made her beautiful face look ferocious. "Madam, don't be anxious. This matter can't be rushed. Moreover, even if this person is dead, don't you have other things in your hands that can prove it? At that time, it will be just a matter of a word from you. I just don't know whether your guess is true or not." Nanny Zhou lowered her voice and persuaded, but then she hesitated. This matter was just Madame's guess, and she didn't know whether it was true or not. "It's a little similar. The time is almost the same, and the general also described that person before. You send someone to look for him again, and if there's any news, you must report to me as soon as possible. This time, take him directly away, so as to avoid any more trouble. As for other things, we'll talk about it later." Madame D felt that she was too indecisive before, or else she wouldn't have let him escape from her hands. If she took him away and directly interrogated him, it would be a great thing if she could get anything out of him. Even if she could not get anything out of him, he was just a servant who was lost in Jiangzhou, and it wouldn't be a problem to kill him. "Yes, madam, I understand." Nanny Zhou understood and said. Thinking about it, Madame D still felt indignant. "We had agreed to let that girl work for me. How dare he send her to the cheap girl's place? Is he deliberately going against me?" "Madam, I'm afraid it's a coincidence. Originally, we were going to choose a maid for the 1st Miss, but unexpectedly, the matter of choosing a maid for the 2nd Miss suddenly popped up, so the person was sent to the 2nd Mississippi." Nanny Zhou didn't think it was possible, and shook her head. This matter was indeed a little coincidental, but there was a reason for it. Chapter 91. Her words made Nanny Zhou tremble. She knew what Madame D was asking, but she didn't dare to answer. "What? Can't you say it? Do you go to that vixen's place every day? How shameless! How can you be so intimate with a widow?" Madame D bit her teeth so hard that they almost sank into her flesh. She stared at Nanny Zhou viciously, as if she was Shui Rulan in front of her. Madam, this is just temporary. When we get to the capital city, we can pressure Duke Huayong's mansion and send beauties to the general. At that time, the general's enthusiasm will be over, and he won't fight against you for her. Moreover, 1st Miss is the general's only daughter." Nanny Zhou comforted Madame D hurriedly. "Okay, I will bear it. I don't believe that Shui Rulan, the bitch, will have a good life in the capital city, and Qin Huayong will really lock me up for a lifetime." Madame D's eyes were almost dripping with venom. When they got back to the capital city, with Duke Yong's mansion behind her, she had plenty of means. "Don't worry, madam. There will be news in a few days. The steward of old madam has sent the news." Nanny Zhou comforted her. These days, she was afraid that Madame D couldn't bear it anymore. They were in Jiangzhou now, and if something really happened, the capital city couldn't do anything. Seeing that Madame D still kept a clear mind, Nanny Zhou was relieved. "Madam, Do you want to send more tonics to old grandma? Have they been sending them? Nanny Zhou thought for a while and reminded Madame D. Although Madame D was now grounded, it was a good thing to send some tonics to show filial piety to her mother-in-law, and the general couldn't stop it. I won't send them off. Madame D refused flatly, and her face became colder and colder. She smiled slightly and said, they have been sending medicinal materials. Where did she get so many medicinal materials? She went to the pharmacy to buy some good ones. After sorting them out, they were sent to the mountain. I heard that old grandma is very satisfied. Nanny Zhou reported. Although the affairs of the mansion were now managed by Madame Shui, Madame D used to have many confidants, so it was easy to get information. Sort out first. Madame D thought for a while and said, pour some of the stuff in my sachet on those herbs and ask Shui Rulan to send them up the mountain. Her words shocked Nanny Zhou and she almost turned pale. Her voice became lower with a little tremble. Madam, are you going to pour the powder of Qingxiu grass into the medicinal herbs? Yes, I was thinking about how to get close to that old woman. Since Shui Rulan is willing to help me, let's do it. If something happens, they won't be able to find out that I'm responsible for it. Madame D said coldly. But Madame Shui has no reason to frame old Madame. Nanny Zhou felt it was inappropriate and cautiously reminded her. Everything was done with a reason. Obviously, Madame Dowager was Shui Rulan's strong support. How could she put the powder of Qingxiu grass, which caused Madame Dowager's illness, into Madame Dowager's medicine? Maybe she didn't pay attention to it. If something happens, it will be a mess. Who will notice it? Madame D said indifferently. She pointed to a direction and said, if someone doesn't like this old woman, that arrogant girl in the magistrate's mansion also had an accident in the general's mansion. She also doesn't like this old woman. She was talking about Qi Rongji. Nanny Zhou understood. Then, shall we do it? She hesitated and asked. Go and do it secretly. Be careful and no one will find it. Shui Rulan has been in charge of the inner court for such a long time. What does she know? Except for her servant girls, who else is her confidant? She doesn't know medicine. Even if she sorts out the medicinal herbs one by one, she won't find anything. Madame D said decisively and reminded, remember to be careful. Don't let anyone find it in the mansion. Be careful of the general's people. Shui Rulan's people were not scary. What was scary was Qin Huayong's people. If Qin Huayong found out that she had done something to the medicinal herbs, he would not let her off easily. I will be careful. Don't worry, madam. Nanny Zhou said anxiously. Madame D thought for a while and ordered, think of a way to make that arrogant girl go to Jingxin Monastery once. It would be better if she can make some trouble. Then even if the medicinal herbs were to be exposed, others would only suspect her. Qi Rongji was not only arrogant but also vicious. She had suffered a great loss in their mansion. Now that Yuru was not here, she would definitely vent her anger on Qin Wanru. It was said that Qin Wanru's marriage was ruined. She would hate Qin Wanru to the bone if she picked a few words. The relationship between the two mansions had been good for many years. Madame D was good at dealing with people. There were also people in the magistrate's mansion who were roped in by Nanny Zhou. It was very convenient for her to do something. Yes, I understand. Nanny Zhou understood and took out a sachet from the bottom of the dressing table. This sachet was worn by Madame D. Now that old grandma was not in the mansion, it was useless to wear it. So she took it off. When Qin Wanru came out of old grandma's room, it was already late. She came so late because she heard that old grandma was not in good health again. With Mingxiu Nun's teaching as a cover, Qin Wanru could treat old grandma at this time. After she personally performed acupuncture on old grandma slept more peacefully. Nanny Duan, did old grandma come in contact with anything today? Qin Wanru asked Nanny Duan at the door. Grandma had been getting better and seemed to be recovering well. How could she suddenly get sick again at this time? She was fine in the morning. When second Miss was here, Madame Dowager basically didn't cough. But after lunch and a short nap, Madame Dowager didn't feel well. During that time, Madame Dowager didn't eat anything but a bowl of nourishing bird's nest. After that, I talked with her in the room for a while. Nanny Duan was also very puzzled. Old Grandma's activities were no different from before, but she coughed badly after waking up. But in fact, it was only a little worse than before and couldn't be compared with the first time. But because Qin Wanru had told Nanny Duan to report immediately if there was any change in old Grandma's condition. Is it because she kicked off the quilt when she fell asleep and got cold? Nanny Duan guessed. Qin Wanru shook her head. If she didn't know medicine, she might also guess so. But she just checked and it seemed that Grandma's illness was not because of the cold, but because she was stimulated by something. Is it the bird's nest that Grandma used to use? Qin Wanru was suspicious. It's what old Grandma used to use. They were all sent by Madame Shui from the foot of the mountain. Because the previous ones were almost used up, Madame Shui sent some more to old Grandma to nourish her body. Nanny Duan remembered it clearly because the servant girl who cooked the bird's nest specially came to her and told her that the bird's nest sent before was almost used up and not enough for a bowl of stew. So she asked the servant girl to find the bird's nest from the newly sent medicinal materials. As expected, there were new ones. Nanny Duan trusted Shui Rulan's things very much. Today's bird's nest was newly sent. Yes, it was sent today, but most of it was the last time, and only a little was added today. Nanny Duan confirmed. Go get it for me. Qin Wanru thought of something and said hurriedly. Yes, I'll get it right now. Second Miss, please wait. Nanny Duan's face turned pale. If it was really about the medicinal materials, she would be negligent, so she hurriedly turned and walked into the room. She heard that her second Miss had learned medicine from the master of Jingxin Monastery and Mingxiu Nun, and now her medical skills were very good. As for the cause of the disease, what second Miss said was naturally true. After a while, she took out a bag of bird's nest. Qin Wanru opened the outer packaging, and her eyes fell on the bird's nest. She looked at it and found nothing, so she picked up a small piece and put it to her mouth. The master of Jingxin Monastery said that normal people couldn't smell Qing Chu grass, but they could identify it by tasting it. Under her lips, there was a slight bitterness. Hands and feet. She trembled. It was really Qing Chu grass. She really wanted to kill Grandma. Without Grandma, without the suppression of the title, Madame D would have the advantage when facing her and her mother, so she couldn't wait to do it. Now Qin Wanru could be sure that the reason why Grandma got sick every year and even died because of the disease in the previous life was because of Madame D. Madame D's old sachet should have Qing Chu grass in it. Now she couldn't see Grandma, so she came up with such a vicious way to send the powder of Qing Chu grass to Grandma. In the previous life, she thought Grandma died of depression because of her, but it turned out to be Madame D. Madame D wanted to dominate the backyard, so she used such a vicious trick to kill Grandma. Now she even used it in the medicinal materials sent by her mother. Even if she found it, she couldn't be blamed. Madame D really had a good trick. And with Madame D's tricks, there should be more than this. Nanny Duan, send all the medicinal materials sent by Mother to me this time. First, use the medicinal materials sent in the past to adjust the body. If there are still some missing materials, please go down the mountain and find some suitable medicinal materials from the medicine shop. Qin Wanru put down the things in her hands and said to Nanny Duan. These medicinal materials. Is there something wrong? Nanny Duan was shocked. There is something wrong, but it can't be Mother. I'm afraid that they have been tampered with when they were sent here. Qin Wanru said euphemistically and slowly lowered her eyes. Nanny Duan immediately understood the meaning of her words. Shui Rulan had not been in charge of the backyard for a long time, and old grandma was on the mountain. How many people could she subdue during this period of time? Someone might deliberately fish in troubled waters and use Shui Rulan's things to harm old grandma. Nanny Duan naturally thought of Madame D. But she also knew that even if this matter was exposed, it had little to do with Madame D and would not affect Madame D. She immediately nodded with a serious face, knowing that Qin Wanru's way of handling it was the best. Nanny Duan admired this childish second miss more and more. She was so young, but she was sensible. Thinking of Madame Dowager's care for second miss in the past and how the second miss protected Madame Dowager now, Nanny Duan's eyes turned red. After Qin Wanru told Madame Dowager everything here, she went back with Qin Yu. At this time, it was already dark and lanterns had been hung in Jingxin Monastery. However, there were not many lanterns. Only one was placed at the corner of the road so that people could see. Chapter 92. Brother Baiyu, what are you doing? Seeing him, Qin Wanru smiled and covered her head with her hands. She squatted down and picked up a stone, tilted her body to the side and threw it back. Qin Wanru, what are you doing? I'm here to tell you something, don't bite the hand that feeds you. The teenager dodged to the side and avoided the stone, but his voice was not loud. He deliberately lowered it. After jumping down from the tree, he waved to Qin Wanru and entered an empty yard. Qin Wanru followed him in. Brother Baiyu, what's the message? Qin Wanru clapped her hands and asked with a smile. Of course it's to tell you to be careful of Qi Rongji. She wanted to come here this afternoon, but she accidentally fell and had to come tomorrow. Qi Baiyu raised his head proudly. So Qi Rongji was supposed to come this afternoon, which was about the time when her mother sent the medicinal materials. According to the usual pattern, if Qi Rongji came to the mountain, she should come to see her grandmother and the elders. Then the matter of the medicinal materials would be even more unclear. Madame D was so calculative. Brother Baiyu, you asked her to fall? Qin Wanru understood and smiled like a flower. Of course it was me. She came to the mountain with bad intentions. Be careful and don't go out if you don't want to meet her again. Qi Baiyu warned. Thank you, Brother Baiyu, I got it. Qin Wanru smiled and bowed to him. They grew up together and were both naughty, so they got along well. I heard that you. Qi Baiyu hesitated for a second when he said this. What do you want to ask, Brother Baiyu? It was the first time that Qin Wanru saw Qi Baiyu so unhappy, so she asked with a smile. Is your family going to leave Jiangzhou? Qi Baiyu blushed when she stared at him. Stomping his feet, the teenager felt that there was nothing to hide. Stomping his feet, the teenager felt that there was nothing he could hide. Maybe. Qin Wanru said. Based on what happened in her previous life, she was indeed about to leave the capital city. However, in her previous life, she left the capital city to avoid her bad reputation in Jiangzhou. In this life, the roles were reversed with Qin Yuru. It was Qin Yuru who went to the capital city to avoid her bad reputation in Jiangzhou. If you really leave, I won't have a good playmate. Qi Baiyu was very sad. You still have Qi Rongji. Qin Wanru teased. She doesn't like to play with me. She likes to play with the young masters of other families. Qi Baiyu curled his lips. He knew very well what kind of person Qi Rongji was, and so did Qin Wanru. By the way, be careful tomorrow. Today, I overheard her talking to Chunyi about you. She said that this time, she will definitely make you pay. Maybe she wants to hurt you again. Don't see her if you can, in case she gives birth to some evil things. Qi Baiyu reminded. Qi Rongji had suffered a great loss this time and gained a reputation of being bossy and domineering, which was not much better than Qin Yuru's. She had not vented her anger until now, so it was very likely that she would vent it on Qin Wanru. Well, I will be careful. Will Brother Baiyu come tomorrow? Qin Wanru asked. Yes, she said that Qi Tianyu is not here. As her brother, I have to accompany her. At night, she even went to the mansion and made a scene. She said that she didn't want me to accompany her, as if I was going to accompany her. Qi Baiyu said disdainfully. Qi Rongji didn't treat him as a brother, and he didn't treat Qi Rongji as a sister either. He thought that Qin Wanru was a better sister. She was well-behaved and obedient. Besides, she loved to play as much as he did. However, after this incident, Qi Baiyu also knew that he had to avoid arousing suspicion. He didn't forget how his brother, who was usually gentle and elegant, reprimanded Qin Wanru. He even said that she had an affair with him. He couldn't believe that such slanderous words came from the sanctimonious Qi Tianyu. In the past, when he wanted to meet Qin Yuru, it was not convenient for him to ask her out directly. Therefore, he and Qi Baiyu asked the Qin sisters out together. After that, he asked Qi Baiyu to keep an eye on Qin Wanru. He didn't know where he and Qin Yuru went to spend time alone. In the end, he and Qin Wanru had nothing to do, but he poured dirty water on Qi Baiyu and Qin Wanru. On him. This time, Qi Baiyu finally saw through Qi Tianyu's true colors. In the past, Qi Baiyu treated him as a brother on the surface. In vain, he really treated him as a brother. He was different from Qi Rongji. Brother Baiyu, are you coming with her? Qin Wanru asked again. A trace of darkness flashed in her watery eyes. If Qi Baiyu came with her, she couldn't make things too big. Otherwise, Qi Baiyu would not be able to explain. What a coincidence. She just heard from the master of Jingxin Monastery that there would be a big religious ceremony tomorrow and there would be a lot of people coming to watch. Many women from all over the country would come, and some of them who lived far away would stay here tonight. These women used to work like men, so they would see a lot of people. They were much more shrewd than the young ladies from rich families. Moreover, some prostitutes also came to join in the fun. That's right, but it's fine. Just let her fall again and return to the mansion early. Qi Baiyu kicked the stone beside his feet. He tilted his head and looked at Qin Wanru. It was rare for a young man to have something on his mind. He sighed. If you go to the capital city, will it be possible to see you again? He would be reluctant to leave his childhood playmates as long as they were playful. It didn't matter about the relationship between a man and a woman. We will meet again. Brother Baiyu, you should also study hard. Then you can go to the capital city to take the exam. Don't let others take all the glory. Qin Wanru comforted him with a smile. She was very touched by him. In her previous life, Qi Baiyu came to the capital city and helped her secretly. When she was in a difficult situation, he always helped her and believed in her. He helped her out of the mire of the Qin's mansion and even wanted to marry her at the cost of his own life after she refused to marry him again and again. However, in the end, Madame D sent her to the Prime Minister's mansion in order to build a relationship with him. Qi Baiyu was a smart man. But in her last life, she had implicated him a lot. His reputation was also damaged because of her. Well, then I'm leaving. Be careful tomorrow. Don't talk to me when you see me. Anyway, you don't need to talk to the people in our mansion. The young man's worries came and went quickly. He thought what Qin Wanru said was reasonable. As long as he studied hard, it was possible to surpass Qi Tianyu. If he could get a good exam and stay in the capital city, he could play with Qin Wanru again. Okay, Brother Baiyu. Be careful. Qin Wanru nodded. Qi Baiyu jumped onto the top of the wall and looked around. Then he went to the corner. If he went down from there, he could directly turn to the path outside of Jingxin Monastery. The manservant was waiting for him at the entrance of the path with the horse. Finding the right direction, Qi Baiyu jumped down from the top of the wall and then climbed up another wall. After a few jumps, he landed on the wall closest to the edge. He could already see the surprised eyes of the manservant outside the wall. Chi Baiyu put his hand on the wall and was ready to jump down. Suddenly, his hand seemed to be hit by something. His wrist was numb and he couldn't bear the force. He fell down from the wall. The servant was so scared that he hurriedly reached out his hand. Both of them fell and rolled together. Second young master, are you okay? Did you hurt yourself? The servant got up and asked anxiously. Chi Baiyu turned over and sat up. He touched the place where he was hurt and said, I didn't fall anywhere. Strange, how did I fall? He raised his head and looked at the high wall. The height was considered high in the eyes of others, but it was nothing in his eyes. He usually liked to learn martial arts from the guards, so his hands and feet were very nimble. How could he suddenly fall from the wall? Good. Second young master, let's go down the mountain. If the Lord knows that you ran out, I will be beaten again. The servant was under a lot of pressure. Chi Baiyu always made trouble, and the servant was always beaten. Sometimes, he was beaten instead of Chi Baiyu. Okay, let's go. No one will know. Of course, Chi Baiyu knew what was on the servant's mind. He burst into laughter and stopped thinking about why he fell down. He stood up and patted his clothes, pulled the reins on one side, and got on the horse. The servant also got on the other pony. The two horses ran down the mountain one after the other along the path. After they left, Chu Luchen jumped down from a tall tree by the wall. A guard under the tree looked at the young master nervously, for fear that he would make any mistake. Although Chu Luchen looked pale, he seemed to be in good spirits. He coughed in a low voice and snorted while looking at the direction where Chi Baiyu disappeared. Climbing the wall of the nunnery in the middle of the night, it was obvious that he was not a good person. If he was not a good person at such a young age, what would happen when he grew up? He would be a flower thief. Qin Wanru, that little girl, was blind. How dare she call him brother? Master, shall we go back now? The guard asked carefully. He reached out his hand to hold Chu Luchen, afraid that something bad would happen to him. Go. Chu Luchen said angrily. He turned around and walked 2 steps with his hands behind his back. Suddenly he turned back and sneered at the wall. Then he strode away as the guard became more and more careful. He didn't know what this master wanted to do. He was going to go back to the capital city tomorrow, but he said he wanted to come to Jingshin Monastery in the middle of the night. He just looked at it from a distance after he entered it. Then he climbed over the wall with other teenagers. Now he deliberately stopped to look at it. He didn't know what was so good about the wall of Jingshin Monastery. However, the guard also felt that he seemed to have found a great secret. Of course, this secret could not be told. The more he knew, the faster he would die. The guard felt that he didn't want to die young. So it was better to keep it a secret. Chu Luchen left early the next morning. His coming to Jiangzhou was a secret. Only Qin Huayong knew about it. When he left, it was even more secret. He didn't even inform Qin Huayong. Since he had arranged everything, he got on the carriage with the secret order from the palace and slowly went to the capital city. Qi Rongji came to the mountain early the next morning. She also got up early. When she reached the mountain, she politely went to old grandma's yard and respectfully greeted old grandma. If the relationship between the two families was the same as before, Qi Rongji would not find it strange. However, the current situation between the two families was not like fire and water, but they had basically cut off all contact. On the day when Qin Huayong got married, only Magistrate Jiang attended the ceremony. Now, Qi Rongji was showing her respect, which really did not leave a good impression on old grandma. After a few words, she said she was tired and saw the guest off. Qin Wanru helped old grandma to send the guest to the corridor. When she turned around and was about to leave, she was stopped by Qi Rongji. Chapter 93. What's the matter? Qin Wanru stopped and looked at Qi Rongji calmly. There was a coldness in her big eyes that could not be ignored. She was very indifferent and distant. Qi Baiyu, move aside. I have something to talk to Qin Wanru. Qi Rongji was about to say something when she found Qi Baiyu was standing beside her. She pushed him and pointed at a direction at random. She did not want Qi Baiyu to follow her. Compared to her, Qi Rongji knew that Qi Baiyu preferred Qin Wanru to be his biological sister. He would help Qin Wanru instead of her. If it were not for her father's insistence that she should be accompanied when she came to Jingshin Monastery, Qi Rongji would not let Qi Baiyu follow her. This man followed her and got in her way. I'm not leaving. I don't want to be blamed on me if anything happens to you. Qi Baiyu rolled his eyes and snorted. He moved aside a little but did not want to leave. Hey, what do you mean? Are you cursing me to get into trouble? Well, Qi Baiyu, I knew you were up to no good. You just arrived at Jingshin Monastery and you started to curse me. Are you going to set me up later? Qi Rongji screamed and walked over to Qi Baiyu and kicked him hard. Qi Rongji was shocked. Hey, how can you hit me without saying anything? Qi Baiyu stepped back again and said angrily. You are the one who doesn't know what's good for you. We two girls want to talk. What are you listening to? Get out of my way and play by yourself. Qi Rongji was getting more and more unreasonable. She walked over and kicked him hard. Every kick was aimed at the middle of Qi Baiyu's legs. She sneered and said, You are a son of a concubine. How can you be so shameless to follow your daughter? Her words were so rude that Qi Baiyu was so angry that his face turned pale. He stretched out his leg that was kicked and said to an old maid beside Qi Rongji, Look carefully. It's not that I don't want to follow her, but she is too hot-tempered. If anything happens this time, don't blame me. With that, he snorted coldly, turned around and strode away. Qin Wanru knew the old maid beside Qi Rongji. She was Qi Rongji's wet nurse. Of course, Qi Baiyu's words were not meant for this old maid. He was talking about Madame Li of Magistrate's Mansion, who was also Qi Rongji's mother. He could tell that Qi Rongji had been throwing dirty water at him in the past. Humph, a lowly bastard son. Qi Rongji looked at Qi Baiyu's back and sneered. Then she turned to Qin Wanru and pointed at the gate of the courtyard. She raised her head and said, Let's go there and talk. No. Qin Wanru smiled slightly, but did not move. Qin Wanru, what do you mean? How dare you talk to me like that? Qi Rongji was stunned for a moment, and then she was furious. Why wouldn't I dare? Is it because your magistrate is superior to General's Mansion, or is it natural for General's Mansion to be bullied by people from your magistrate? Qin Wanru raised her eyebrows and looked at Qi Rongji coldly, without dodging. There were servants from General's Mansion in the courtyard, and there were also servants from Magistrate's Mansion brought by Qi Rongji. If these words were really spread out, it would not only make the relationship between the two mansions look bad, but also the political problem of who was superior, which was not so simple. Although they were at the same level, in terms of strength, General's Mansion was obviously more powerful. Second Miss Qin, our first miss just wants to talk to you. Didn't they have a good relationship before? Why did second Miss Qin suddenly have a bad relationship with our first miss? What happened before was between first young master and your first Mississippi. It has nothing to do with second Miss Qin and our first miss. The old maid coughed in a low voice and answered. She was good at talking. On the one hand, she said that Qi Rongji had a good relationship with her, and on the other hand, she hinted that General's Mansion had wronged the magistrate. Is first Miss Qi addicted to bullying our second miss? What do you mean by a good relationship? It has always been your first miss bullying our first Mississippi. Now our first miss doesn't want to play with your first miss, can't she? Qin Yu took a step forward and stood in front of Qin Wanru, looking alert. First Miss Qi, please go back. I don't want to say anything to you. Qin Wanru said calmly, you think you are smart, but don't treat others as fools. After saying this, she turned around and walked back. Qi Rongji's face turned red with anger. You have no manners. How could you say such words? She had never been refuted like this, and it was by Qin Wanru, whom she despised the most. At this time, Qin Wanru and Qin Yu echoed each other's words, and she was so angry that she almost exploded. First Miss Qi, the whole Jiangzhou prefecture is saying that you have no manners, and now you are questioning others' manners. Qin Wanru stopped and looked at Qi Rongji with contempt. Now the whole Jiangzhou prefecture was saying that Qi Rongji was rude and unreasonable. Of course, it was impossible for her to have any manners. Even so, she still dared to mock others' manners, which was really a joke. Qin Wanru, you bitch, just you wait. I will never forgive you. Qi Rongji really exploded, and her face turned red and then green. Why won't you forgive me? Qin Wanru said coldly. I. Qi Rongji was so angry that she couldn't even speak for a moment. First Miss Qi, please go back. My grandmother is still sick. If you continue to shout here, you will disturb my grandmother. She is old and really can't stand your voice. First Miss Qi, please don't. Qin Wanru seemed to not see Qi Rongji's angry face, and her voice was still calm and cold. She pointed outside and smiled coldly, look, the door is over there. First Miss Qi, please guard the door and go out. If you have any problems, don't come to our general's mansion. My big sister has already gone to the capital city, and now the people in general's mansion owe nothing to your magistrate, so don't be so stubborn. Bitch, how dare you say such words? Qin Wanru, just you wait, I will tear you apart. If it wasn't for the old maid beside her who was holding her tightly, Qi Rongji almost pounced on Qin Wanru and scratched her disgusting face. First Miss Qi, although our second miss is young, she is still the miss of our general's mansion. You keep calling her a bitch, but I don't know where you got the temper to scold our second miss like this. Nanny Duan walked out of the room, and her eyes fell on Qi Rongji coldly, and her face was cold. Qin Wanru secretly praised Nanny Duan secretly. Nanny Duan deserved to be the most useful person by Grandma's side. On one hand, she said that Qi Rongji was bullying her, and on the other hand, she said that the magistrate was arrogant and oppressed the general's mansion. She provoked me. Qi Rongji was shocked when she saw it was Nanny Duan, who served old Madame Qin, and hurriedly explained. Our second miss provoked you to break into her house. First Miss Qi, the relationship between our two mansions is obviously not good, why did you come to see our second miss? Now you are scolding the miss of our general's mansion. I want to ask Miss Qi, is this the education of the magistrate that Miss Qi described? Nanny Duan said loudly. First Miss, since second Miss Qin is not willing to talk to you, let's go back. The old maid who followed Qi Rongji saw Nanny Duan coming out and knew that something was wrong. She hurriedly pulled Qi Rongji's hand and hinted. What Qi Rongji said just now had offended the general's mansion. If Ningyuan army general was really angry with his master because of this, it would be troublesome. According to Madam, Ningyuan army general had secretly said that after he entered the capital city, he would also help his master to enter the capital city to make up for the marriage between the two families. If this matter was ruined, his master would be angry. Okay, let's go. Qi Rongji stamped her feet angrily. Miss Qi, take care. If you come to scold our second miss again in the future, please don't come to our general's mansion anymore. We can't afford to entertain you. Nanny Duan raised her voice behind Qi Yunxian. Nanny Duan felt relieved when she said this. Qin Wanru also felt relieved. Thank you, Nanny. After Qi Rongji left, Qin Wanru smiled and thanked Nanny Duan. I hope this first Miss Qi won't come again. If she comes, nothing good will happen. She won't go back without making some trouble and taking advantage of us. Nanny Duan also felt relieved. In the past, Madame D had suppressed Qi Rongji and made her give in to Qi Rongji. Now she didn't have to do that anymore. In this aspect, Nanny Duan thought it was a good thing. Qin Wanru looked at Qi Rongji's back and smiled thoughtfully. No matter what Qi Rongji wanted to do, she would deal with it by remaining unchanged. With Qi Rongji's temperament, it was easy for her to be provoked and lose her head. She could not do anything to Qi Rongji because Qi Baiyu was here, but she could not guarantee that Qi Rongji would do anything crazy. Anyway, Qi Baiyu was driven away by her. Nanny, you go back first. I'll go to the door and have a look. It seems that there are many people watching. I'm afraid that Qi Rongji will vent her anger on others. Qin Wanru moved her feet and ordered. Okay, second miss, be careful. Don't make trouble with first Miss Qi. Her reputation is ruined, but your reputation is still there. Moreover, you can't explain it to the general. Nanny Duan was afraid that Qin Wanru would really make trouble with Qi Rongji at the door, so she lowered her voice and said with concern. Don't worry, Nanny. I won't make trouble with her. Qin Wanru nodded, and a trace of cold sarcasm flashed in her eyes. There must be a good show in front of the door. With Qi Rongji's temperament, she always thought that everyone would give in to her. At this time, there were not only the family members of officials watching the show at the door, but also many women in the market. When those women started to make trouble, they would not care whether you were the daughter of the magistrate or not. Qi Rongji came out of old grandma's yard in anger. When she came out, she saw some pilgrims who stayed overnight blocking the door to watch the show. She was so angry that she almost went crazy. She stretched out her hands and pushed the two women standing in front of her hard. She shouted, "Get out of the way, get out of the way. Are you blind? You are blocking my way." The two women who were watching the show were pushed and staggered 2 steps. They almost fell and bumped into several other women beside them. Chapter 94. Many people came to see them because of the loud noise. They didn't know the identity of the people in the yard and Qi Rongji. But seeing that Qi Rongji brought a lot of people with her, they knew she must be a miss from a big family. Although this miss had a high status, the fact that she scolded people as soon as she opened her mouth really made everyone feel that she didn't deserve her status. Because she didn't deserve it, more and more people came to see her. But there were old maids guarding the gate of the yard, so they didn't get too close. They just listened and watched from a distance. The walls of the yard of pilgrims in Jingxin Monastery were not high, so they could stand on tiptoe outside and see roughly. How can you say that? Where did you come from? How dare you scold me? Qi Rongji had suffered a great loss because of Qin Wanru's soft rebuke. Now she was full of anger. When she saw that someone dared to scold her, she immediately straightened her eyes. She looked at the woman's clothes and immediately exploded. She stretched out her hand and pushed the woman hard again. Get out of my way. Good dogs don't block the way. All kinds of bitches dare to block my way. Her words were said together with the anger that Qin Wanru had suffered just now. There were a lot of people in front of her. In this way, it seemed that everyone was included. Many people were not happy. Her hand that was pushed out was pressed hard by someone, and someone pinched her fiercely in the crowd. Qi Rongji didn't know where she had twisted her hand, but she screamed in pain. She retracted her hand fiercely and hit the woman standing beside her a few times. She was really mad with anger. Get out of my way, you lowly people. Who allowed you to come near me? Get out, get out, get out. It would have been better if she didn't scold them. But after she scolded them, the people around were not happy. Whether they were beaten or not, they all came to Qi Rongji's face and body unceremoniously. Qi Rongji's maids and old maids immediately rushed over, trying to save her. However, Qi Rongji had scolded them too harshly and hurt them too much. Many of them were angry after being beaten and scolded. How could they allow them to take her away? Thus, a large group of people got into a fight. Qi Rongji had brought a lot of people with her today, but they were not as many as the onlookers. At this time, it was a mess. Some people even came to pull her hair and clothes. Fighting in the streets was not so particular. It was a straightforward fight. No one cared about her identity at this moment. In any case, no one knew who she was. No one would care about her now. Qi Rongji was a delicate girl. She screamed in pain when her hair and clothes were pulled a few times. She immediately learned how to grab people's hair and faces. For a moment, there was chaos and screams. When Qin Wanru came out, she saw the chaotic scene in front of her. She reached out to stop the people around her from intervening and stepped back. Then she asked a servant girl to invite the master of Jingxin Monastery to come over. In such a mess, anyone who got involved would be beaten, grabbed, and scratched. The safest way was to invite the master of Jingxin Monastery. The people who got involved in the fight were all red in the eyes. Moreover, there was another characteristic of women when they fought. They would grab their hair, face, and clothes. The master of Jingxin Monastery came quickly. Soon, she arrived at the gate of the courtyard and asked the nuns to separate the people on both sides. Seeing the appearance of the nuns, everyone knew that they were from Jingxin Monastery. Many people then remembered that they were here to watch the religious ceremony in Jingxin Monastery. They regained their senses and stepped back, revealing a group of people standing in the middle. The maids and old maids in the magistrate's mansion knew to protect their master. But even so, Qi Rongji still sat on the ground in a mess. Her clothes were untidy and her hair was messy. She slightly raised her dull face and there was a bloodstain on her forehead. It was obvious that she was scratched. Qin Wanru walked forward slowly and asked someone to help Qi Rongji up. "Miss Qi, are you okay?" Qi Rongji was in a half-dazed state. She looked like she had lost her mind. Miss Qi, are you okay? Don't scare me." Her wet nurse was also panicked. She rushed to Qi Rongji and held her face, shouting again. "Whoever caught our Miss Qi, don't think about leaving today. How dare you scratch our Miss Qi's face? Do you know who our Miss Qi is? Our Miss Qi is the daughter of the magistrate. How dare you hit her? Do you want to die?" Chun Yi's face was livid. She scolded the women on the side. Her image was not good at this time. It was not much different from Qi Rongji. "Help Miss Qi up." The master of Jingxin Monastery ordered the nuns beside her. Two nuns came over and helped Qi Rongji up carefully. When the women around them heard that it was the daughter of the magistrate, they panicked for a while. Many of them quietly stepped back and secretly rejoiced in their hearts. Fortunately, there were so many people at the scene and no one knew who had met this lady. Miss Qi, please say something. What's wrong with you?" Qi Rongji's wet nurse was still shouting in panic. "Take her to the meditation room at the side. I will check her face. Miss Qi's face can't be hurt," the master of Jingxin Monastery said gently. This reminded the old maid. She nodded repeatedly without wiping her tears. The face of the daughter of an aristocratic family was indeed precious. If it was really ruined, no one who came with her today would be well off. Thinking of their mistress's means, the servants panicked. Even Chun Yi didn't have time to be angry. She followed Qi Rongji in panic. No one had time to care about so many people around. They scattered out one by one. They were all planning to run away. They hit the daughter of the magistrate and made her look horrible. No one could bear the responsibility. What happened? Qi Baiyu came in a hurry and asked with a straight face. "Second young master, Miss Qi was beaten." "Second young master, please help Miss Qi." At the sight of Qi Baiyu, the servants in the magistrate's mansion seemed to have found their backbone. One by one, they began to cry. Even Qi Rongji's wet nurse began to wipe her tears. Although they had always looked down on Qi Baiyu and often humiliated him with Qi Rongji, they acted as if Qi Baiyu was the one in charge now. Let the master of Jingxin Monastery check her wound first. Don't leave a scar. Qi Baiyu looked at the situation and frowned. That's what I thought too. Then let's go quickly. Don't delay. Qi Baiyu frowned and said. A large group of people left with the master of Jingxin Monastery. The onlookers also disappeared at this time. No one dared to stay and watch the drama after such a thing happened. Even those who had not been involved at that time were also flustered at this time, for fear that Miss Qi would not be able to recognize them clearly and would randomly select people. They could not get themselves involved in the drama. Miss Qi, will we be blamed for this? Qin Yu was a little worried. Of course not. Qin Wanru shook her head. Qi Rongji was indeed provoked by her on purpose, but she was not the one who had the conflict with her. Moreover, it was Qi Rongji herself who had hurt Qin Wanru and even hit Qin Wanru. In the chaos afterward, no one knew who had hit Qin Wanru. Moreover, Magistrate Qi did not want the whole Jiangzhou prefecture to talk about his daughter's behavior like a shrew after such a shameful thing. When they returned to the room, old grandma also asked about the situation outside. Such a big noise had alarmed her. But she did not say anything when she heard that Qi Rongji was not in a serious condition. The whole thing was caused by Qi Rongji herself. It had nothing to do with the general's mansion. What? You didn't arrest those lowly people who beat me. What are you for? What are you for? Qi Rongji's forehead was wrapped with a big white scarf. Her face was pale as she cursed. She reached for the teacup beside her and was about to smash it on Qi Baiyu's face. Qi Baiyu reached out and grabbed the teacup in her hand. He smashed it on the ground and said harshly, "Have you had enough? Do you still want to make trouble? Now the whole Jiangzhou prefecture knows about your reputation, Miss Qi. You came here to burn incense, but you fought with other pilgrims. You are like a shrew in the market. You used to have a reputation of being rude and unreasonable, but now you have another one, and many people saw it. What more do you want, Qi Rongji? It's all your fault. It's all your fault. You are the son of a concubine. How dare you say this? If you didn't go to play by yourself, I wouldn't have had such a thing happen." Although Qi Rongji was startled, she still scolded Qi Baiyu loudly. She was so annoyed that she blamed everything on Qi Baiyu. In the past, she had always blamed Qi Baiyu for this kind of thing. Now she did it out of habit. I went to play by myself. Weren't you the one who pushed me out and asked me to go far away? How did I become the one who wanted to go out and have fun? Qi Rongji, we are now in Jingxin Monastery, not the magistrate's office. It's not a place where you can do whatever you want. Please take a good look. There are so many witnesses who can prove that you drove me out. I want to see where you can hide your face. Qi Baiyu said coldly. He moved closer to Qi Rongji and sneered, "Qi Rongji, don't tell me you want father to know that you put something else in the other yard and wanted to hurt second Miss Qin in private? You want to send me away and then trick Qin Wanru in my name?" His voice was so low that only Qi Rongji could hear it. Qi Rongji's face changed and her hands trembled. She looked at Qi Baiyu in shock and couldn't say a word. First Miss Qin has left Jiangzhou. Ningyuan Army General loves second Miss Qin the most now. The head of the general's mansion is also Madame Shui, who loves second Miss Qin. Old Madame Qin is in charge. If you really hurt Qin Wanru, Ningyuan Army General will think of ways to kill you. Chapter 95. Do you really think that you are the most distinguished lady in Jiangzhou? After Qi Baiyu finished his words, he moved away from Qi Rongji's ear and leaned back on the corner of the table with his arms crossed. You should think about how to explain this to father. This time is different from the last time. Many people saw it. You can't say it as you like. You will not be the only one who will be humiliated, but also father. The military and politics are not in harmony. Something big will happen. Jiangzhou is close to the border. Qi Baiyu's voice was not loud this time, but it was enough for other servants in the room to hear. They had all kinds of tricks in their hearts and wanted to shirk the responsibility, but now they had to face this problem. In the past, when Qi Rongji pushed the blame to Qin Wanru, it was not a big deal because Madame Di and Qin Yuru were there. But now it was different. The power in the backyard of General's mansion had changed. Qin Wanru was no longer a person who was not loved by her father and mother. Moreover, the incident happened in Jingxin Monastery, and the passers-by who saw it were not people they could bribe. If what they said did not match, they might become the scapegoat in the end. Thinking of this, the servant girls and old maids trembled. But they were very clear that they would not talk nonsense. It was the safest to say what they wanted to say. Anyway, there were so many people at that time. It was not their fault that they could not protect young lady. Qi Rongji was shocked by Qi Baiyu's sudden ruthlessness. She understood what Qi Baiyu meant and her face changed immediately. You know something? If you don't want people to know, don't do it. How do you know? Qi Rongji's voice trembled. She was scared. If she really ruined Qin Wanru's face, she might be punished by General's mansion. Qi Rongji could not calm down when she thought that she almost ended up in the most despicable place. Just like Qin Yuru, she had bought her maid's hair to a brothel several times. But when she thought that it happened to her, she immediately felt that it was better to die than to live. She did not want to end up like this. Qi Rongji, I remember that father has repeatedly warned you not to make trouble in General's mansion, but you just don't listen. Whose slanderous words did he listen to this time to bring trouble upon himself? You caused so much trouble for your father and made yourself look like this. If it wasn't for the master of Jingxin Monastery, your face would have been ruined. Qi Tianyu continued to exert more pressure on Qi Rongji's heart, and then calmly led the conversation to the word, slander. Qin Wanru had already said that Qi Rongji should have been deceived to come here, so they should lead the topic in this direction. Slander. Qi Rongji stared at her wet nurse blankly. She was scared speechless by Qi Baiyu's words. Who asked you to tell me that I could go up the mountain to vent my anger on Qin Wanru? Miss. The wet nurse panicked and knelt down, wanting to explain. Nanny, how could you lead Miss here? Did someone give you some benefits? Chun-Yi was a smart one. She was in a panic at this time and was afraid that she would be responsible for this. Now that she heard it, she immediately understood. She pointed at the wet nurse and shouted angrily. Tell me, why did you lead me here to deal with Qin Wanru? You said that you would drive Qi Baiyu away, and then talk to Qin Wanru, pretending to reconcile, and then use Qi Baiyu's name to deceive Qin Wanru to a secluded place. After that, you would knock her out and scratch her face, and then it would have nothing to do with me. Qi Rongji gave 2 hard slaps on the wet nurse's face and scolded her. You said that with the conversation between me and Qin Wanru, no one would be able to link it to me. You also said that even if something happened, they would only find out that it was Qi Baiyu. So what happened now? Qi Rongji wanted to tear the wet nurse into pieces, so she kicked her hard, and the wet nurse fell to the ground. She cried and grabbed Qi Rongji's leg, trying to explain to her. First miss, I just wanted to help First Miss vent your anger. Anyway, it was second young master's fault, and it had nothing to do with First Miss. Qi Baiyu snorted coldly at the side. He walked over to the old woman who was still talking nonsense and gave her a kick. The wet nurse's body moved backward and hit the wall on the side, making a huge impact. For a moment, everyone in the room was stunned. Qi Rongji, don't think that you can always think of harming people and have someone to protect you. Now, you have to explain this to your father. As for her, I believe that you are smart enough to find out who is behind all this. You are just a stick in someone's hand. Chi Baiyu smiled coldly, and he moved the corner of his mouth. After that, he turned around and strode away. He didn't want to stay here and watch them fight each other. First miss, I remember that the wet nurse and nanny Zhou from Ningyuan Army General's mansion are very close. Just yesterday, I saw them talking secretly in a corner. Chun Yi screamed behind her. At this time, she was trying her best to find out the evidence and blame it on the wet nurse. Yes, I saw it too. Just yesterday, I accidentally passed by and heard something about Jingxin Monastery. But I didn't pay much attention to it, so I didn't listen more. It's Nanny Zhou from Ningyuan Army General's mansion, the one who follows Madame D. I also know her. There were a lot of people talking at the same time. All of them had come back to their senses. Chi Baiyu stood in the corridor, looked at Qi Rongji's room, and sneered. He strode out, and his servant followed closely behind him. At this time, he was full of impatience, and walked forward with a gloomy face. But he stopped at the corner. Under a big tree, Qin Wanru stood there, and her jade-like face was slightly raised, with a faint and gentle smile. Her face was very delicate, and the color was very vivid. She slightly raised her face, and under her long eyelashes, her eyes were watery. So beautiful and so quiet. As if something was soothing the impatience in Chi Baiyu's heart, he stood still and walked slowly to Qin Wanru. Have you found out who is behind this? Qin Wanru asked gently. When Qi Rongji was being treated, she asked Qin Yu to secretly see Chi Baiyu, and asked him to lead Qi Rongji to this side. She was sure that Qi Rongji was led to Jingxin Monastery by someone. Your mansion's Madame D. Chi Baiyu frowned, and there was a kind of hostility in his eyes that had never been seen before. He said coldly. It's her again. Qin Wanru was not surprised. She tilted her head and smiled, but her smile was a little cold. She wants to ruin you so much. You are not her biological son. She has raised you for so many years, and she doesn't have any feelings for you. Even if you are a dog, she would not want to hurt you after raising you for so long. Chi Baiyu said coldly, and his eyebrows were raised sharply. I am not as good as a dog. Qin Wanru smiled and came to a conclusion. Seeing that she came to such a conclusion with her beautiful face, Chi Baiyu felt more and more uncomfortable. He opened his mouth subconsciously and wanted to say something to comfort her, but in the end, he could only say this resentfully, the one I raise in the mansion is not even as good as a dog. He was a son of a concubine. This was something he knew since he was born. His concubine was not a troublemaker. Every day, she liked to set up the Buddha hall in her courtyard. With one look, it was obvious that she was not favored. But even so, Lady Li did not spare her. She would pull her over to scold her every now and then. She did not treat him well either. If anything happened in the mansion, she would push the blame to him. When he was young, he was not sensible and cried a few times. Later, when he grew up, he gradually understood that he was a scapegoat. As long as Qi Rongji did something wrong, as long as he was present, he was basically the scapegoat. When he was young, he was beaten by Magistrate Qi for this reason. At first, he thought that his elder brother was not bad, but later he found that his elder brother, Qi Tianyu, was just better at hiding. When he framed someone, he was even more ruthless. He just said that Madame D had raised Qin Wanru for so many years, and even if she was a dog, she would have developed feelings for her. Qin Wanru did not have a biological mother to compete with her, and she treated her as her biological mother. In fact, he was also talking about himself. His biological mother did not compete with her, and he was also a noble Madame Li at the beginning. But in the end, both of them almost became the scapegoat for Qi Tianyu and Qin Yuru for the rest of their lives. Both of them were not loved by their parents, and no one would help them to be the scapegoat. If they could not clear it themselves, it would be a shadow for the rest of their lives. I want to live a better life. Qin Wanru smiled. Her lips were curved, and her watery eyes were curved. She was so cute, and without the indifference just now, she looked so warm that it made people feel sorry for her. Brother Baiyu, you also have to live a better life, and make those who want to frame us feel even more uncomfortable. Since they wanted to trample her into the mud, then she had to live a better life, and trample all of them. Qin Wanru was not tall, and Qi Baiyu was a little taller than her. At this time, she raised her head and looked at Qi Baiyu with childish seriousness and stubbornness, which made her delicate little face look vivid and brilliant. The ripples in her watery eyes were more beautiful than the surroundings. Qin Wanru's eyes were full of happiness. At this moment, it was as if everyone had forgotten that she was still so young. Qi Baiyu's heart was slightly moved, and his eyes softened. He recovered the sunny smile of a young man, and looked up at the sky. Yes, I want to live a better life, better than my brother, so that some people can't stop praising my brother. My brother is the pillar of the mansion, while I, the son of a concubine, am the useless thing that drags down the mansion. Go back, someone from our mansion will come later. This has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with old grandma. As for how to argue, it depends on how they solve it. Qi Baiyu waved his hand, and turned to go back. Before someone from the mansion came, he really could not leave. Brother Baiyu, be careful. Qin Wanru nodded. She was afraid that Qi Baiyu would be involved, so she specially came to have a look. Chapter 96. Go to the capital city. Why do you want to go to the capital city? The news was so sudden that the smile on Qin Wanru's face froze. In her previous life, Qi Baiyu went to the capital city a few years later. Although Magistrate Qi was transferred, it still took a few years. When Qi Baiyu went to the capital city, he was appreciated and supported by someone, so he became an official in the imperial court in just a few years. Since Qi Tianyu can go to the capital city, why can't I? Stay here and watch Qi Rongji act like an idiot. Qi Baiyu showed a smile on his face, as if he had thought it through. If Qi Rongji stays here, her reputation will not be better than Qin Yuru's. So. Qin Wanru didn't understand for a moment. She blinked her watery eyes and a thought flashed through her mind. Then she suddenly opened her eyes wide and asked, "You mean Qi Rongji will also go to the capital city?" Why not? Based on her current situation, it is impossible for her to find a good marriage in Jiangzhou. Qi Baiyu smiled. When this idea just came up, he just vaguely felt that it was good. After talking with Qin Wanru, he immediately had a clear goal. His playmate was going to the capital city, and his good brother was also going to the capital city. Then why should he stay? When Qi Tianyu became famous, would he step on him more and more in the mud? Originally, he didn't have any big ideas about himself. Although he was not favored in the mansion, at least he was the son of the magistrate. Others were respectful to him outside, and he didn't have any pursuits. All he wanted was to eat, drink, and play with some friends. However, there were too many things that had happened recently. Everything seemed to have little to do with him, but in fact, almost all of them were related to him. His hypocritical elder brother, his protective father, his spoiled younger sister, and his harsh legal mother. All of these made him grow up rapidly in these few days. He even had a vague idea that if he really did nothing, he might be left behind by Qi Tianyu forever. At that time, Qi Tianyu could frame him in any way he wanted and throw the blame on him. Men and women were different. Although reputation was not so important, responsibility was very important. So, Qi Rongji is also going to the capital city, and you can go with her in the name of escorting her? Qin Wanru analyzed after thinking for a while. My father won't leave, and my mother won't leave either. So, I'm the only one who can send her to the capital. Qi Baiyu twitched his lips and said with the slyness of a young man. It was not a good idea for a girl to go to the capital city alone. Moreover, Qi Rongji was someone who could cause trouble at any time. Who knew what would happen if she went to the capital city alone? And she could no longer stay in Jiangzhou Prefecture. Where will you live after you go to the capital city? Qin Wanru was still a little worried and frowned. We have a house in the capital city. Qi Tianyu lives there now. When Qi Rongji and I go there, we will naturally live together. Qi Tianyu has always been a modest gentleman. Of course, he won't reject me, his younger brother. He even has to be more friendly to me. After all, the capital city is not Jiangzhou. Father can't hide anything. Qi Baiyu said casually. Then what do you want to do after you go to the capital city? In her last life, Qin Wanru couldn't even go out of the mansion. She had no idea how Qi Baiyu was valued by others. She couldn't think of a good idea now. She was only worried that it might not be a good thing for him to go to the capital city at such a young age. There are many things I can do. Although I'm not good at literature, I'm good at martial arts. Actually, I can give it a try. Qi Baiyu stretched out his hand and showed his fist. Then he waved his hand at Qin Wanru and said, "It's useless to tell you now whether you can go to the capital city with me or not. We have to let my husband talk to your father. But in the end, I'm afraid their relationship will be better." After Qi Baiyu finished his teasing, he directly turned around with a smile. Calculating the time, the person he sent to inform had already arrived at the magistrate's mansion. The person from the mansion should be arriving soon. Since this matter was related to Madame D, he could push it to the general's mansion. Since the magistrate and the general's mansion didn't want to completely turn against each other, it was necessary to negotiate. It was actually not a big deal to let Ningyuan Army General's mansion take him and Qi Rongji on the way to the capital city. Whether it was the previous marriage or this matter where Madame D intervened and caused Qi Rongji's face to be scratched, it was Ningyuan Army General's mansion's fault. With this premise, it was also reasonable for the magistrate to make some requests. It would be best to send Qi Rongji to Ningyuan Army General's mansion. Qi Baiyu touched his chin and secretly thought about the possibility of this. In fact, this possibility was very high. Magistrate Qi came here with his people. After seeing Qi Rongji's face, he was relieved. Even if there was a scar, it would be on the forehead. In the future, she could just cover it with her bangs. Moreover, the master of Jingxin Monastery said that it was not a big problem. If she paid a little attention, she might not even have a scar. After finding out what happened, Magistrate Qi was furious. He dragged out several servants of Qi's mansion and beat them up. After that, he went down the mountain. With Qi Rongji's wet nurse as an excuse, it was not difficult to investigate Madame D's matter. That night, Qin Huayong went up the mountain. After meeting old Madame Qin, he asked Qin Wanru to take him to Qin Wanru's courtyard. After entering the room, Qin Huayong sat on the chair in the middle. He took the tea that Qin Wanru offered and took a sip. He was silent for a while. Qin Wanru was not in a hurry and quietly waited for him to speak. After a long while, Qin Huayong said, "What did she do?" His voice was a little tired. It was not the tiredness that a general like him should have. Although Qin Huayong did not say anything, Qin Wanru knew he was talking about Madame D. She did not hide anything. She raised her head and said, "Father, there is Qingxiu grass powder in Grandma's bird's nest. This kind of grass can cause Grandma's illness. Often smelling it will make Grandma's illness more and more serious, and even make Grandma." Qin Wanru's eyes turned red. In her previous life, Grandma passed away in this way. Who sent the bird's nest? Qin Huayong did not ask how Qin Wanru knew it. Old Grandma had already told him that Qin Wanru was learning medicine from Mingqiu Nun. She also said that Qin Wanru was very good at it. She could already occasionally perform acupuncture for old Grandma to relieve her physical symptoms, and the effect was very good. It was sent by my mother. But my mother has just been in charge of the inner court for a short time. If she still uses the original people, it is very easy to mix a little Qingxiu grass powder. Qin Wanru said sullenly. She did not raise her head, nor did she do much to disguise herself. Qi Rongji had such a big accident, and Madame D was found out. Magistrate Jiang was not a person who would suffer losses. He would definitely ask Qin Huayong for compensation. Since Qi Baiyu had the intention, the compensation must include protecting Qi Rongji and Qi Baiyu when they went to the capital city. Qin Wanru thought about Qi Baiyu's words afterwards and thought it was very feasible. Of course, with Magistrate Jiang's temperament, this was definitely not enough. Qin Huayong would definitely make some more concessions. Now he came up to the mountain to ask the reason. I heard that first Miss Qi came up to the mountain yesterday, and the bird's nest was also sent to the mountain yesterday. After first Miss Qi came up to the mountain, she should come to visit Grandma. If something happened to Grandma at that time, the first suspect would be first Miss Qi. With first Miss Qi's temperament, she might cause some other trouble. At that time, it would not be easy to find out Grandma's condition. Qin Wanru lowered her head and continued to say. She didn't want to hide these things. Madame D wanted to shift the blame to Qi Rongji because she knew Qi Rongji's temperament. This time, Qi Rongji would definitely want to make a big fuss. When Qi Rongji made a big fuss, old Grandma's health would deteriorate due to anger and her illness would worsen. Who would notice other aspects? Qin Huayong sighed deeply and said, Wanru, father has wronged you. It's nothing, but, please don't hurt Grandma. She is old and usually doesn't care about things. Qin Wanru's eyes were red. She shook her head, looked up at Qin Huayong in front of her, and pleaded. No matter how powerful Madame D's background was, she was married. She was different from an unmarried woman. She relied on her husband's family and her husband. If the man she married was only guarded against her and had no pity for her, this marriage was just a facade. Qin Huayong's repeated schemes had already made Madame D lose Qin Huayong's heart. In the future, if Madame D wanted to scheme against her when Shui Rulin was pregnant, it would not be so feasible. No matter what she did, Qin Huayong would think in his mind whether she wanted to scheme against something again. To deal with Madame Qin and her daughter, she could not be anxious. She had to do it step by step. Even if Madame D had Duke Yong's mansion behind her, so what? 1,000-mile dike could be destroyed by an ant's nest. She would do it slowly. I won't let your grandma be in such danger. You should also have a good rest. In a few days, take your grandma down the mountain. After a period of time, we will go to the capital city. There are a lot of things to pack in the mansion, yours and Grandma's. Your mother didn't care about the affairs of the inner court before, so it will be better for you to help. Qin Huayong looked a little embarrassed. As a son, his current behavior should be regarded as a great unfilial. He knew that Madame D was not appropriate, but he still kept her. Thinking of this, Qin Huayong was also very ashamed, but he could only do this now. Father is going to be transferred to the capital city. Qin Wanru knew that she could not keep thinking about this at this time and should stop before going too far, so she changed the topic. She immediately wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief, and showed a slight surprise on her face. Yes, we are going to the capital city. Father's transfer order will come soon. When all the procedures are completed, we will leave. During this period, you will help your mother pack things in the mansion, and throw away some things that are not needed. Qin Huayong ordered. In the past, he only thought that his little daughter was naive and ignorant of the affairs of the world, but recently he found that his little daughter was very smart. She was not only smart but also useful. Originally, he was worried that old Grandma's health might not be good on the way to the capital city. But now that Qin Wanru's medical skills were excellent and she was praised by the master of Jingxin Monastery, he had nothing to worry about. If he had known that Wanru was so talented in medicine, he would not have stopped her like his mother. Chapter 97. They will go with us. Although Qin Wanru had already guessed it, she didn't show it on her face. She only showed a slightly surprised expression. Yes, they will go with us. We owe Qi's mansion a lot. Qin Huayong frowned tightly, and his face didn't look good. Not only because of Qin Yuru, but also because of what Madame D did this time. Magistrate Qi and Qi Ping had something on them. The result of their showdown was that Qin Huayong had to temporarily accept Qi Rongji and try to find a good marriage for her. In the future, you only need to be close to your mother. Others don't care too much. Qin Huayong looked at Qin Wanru and said with a hidden meaning. Yes, I will listen to my father's arrangement. Qin Wanru said respectfully, as if she didn't understand the meaning of Qin Huayong's words that she didn't need to care too much about Madame D. After Qin Huayong left, Qin Wanru didn't immediately wash up and go to bed. Instead, she made medicine under the lamp. She was very careful and meticulous. She threw several kinds of medicine she needed into the stone mortar, took a small medicine pestle and pounded it carefully. She asked Shui Rulan to bring these medicines to the mountain a few days ago. When Shui Rulan sent the medicine to old grandma, she also brought some for her. She just got them from old grandma, but these medicines were also contaminated with the smell of Qing Chu grass. For ordinary people, the smell of Qing Chu grass was not a problem. This was a task assigned by Mingxiu Nun. It was not too difficult for her now. However, the medicine contaminated with Qing Chu grass gave her a sudden inspiration and a new idea. She had met quite a number of people during her trip to the capital city. In her previous life, she had been schemed against and broken off her engagement. Those people might appear again. She had to get rid of all of them before they could propose to the general's mansion. She only had Qing Yu by her side, which was too little. She needed more useful people, and she needed more loyal people. She liked a person and wanted to take him to the capital city. The medicine with the smell of Qing Chu grass was a powerful means. Miss, how about this servant help you? It's so late. Are you going to sleep? Qing Yu saw it was not early, so she brought in a cup of tea and said with concern. No, I can do it myself. You don't know when to put in other herbs. Qin Wanru shook her head, and a smile flashed in her watery eyes. Looking at Qin Wanru holding the pestle so hard that her white and tender little hands were red and even slightly swollen, Qing Yu felt distressed. Miss, I'm strong. I'll do the pestle. Miss, you can guide me on the side so that you can have a rest. Qin Wanru said with a smile. Qin Wanru's skin was as white as snow. When she pinched the handle of the pestle, a large red patch could be seen clearly. Jiao Jiao's small hands had always been reading books and adjusting wires. She had never used so much strength to hold something and do such work. It's okay. You don't understand this, Qing Yu. It's better for me to do it myself. Qin Wanru looked at the red marks on her hand and was not very satisfied. She continued to use force on the stone mortar. Although her hand was in pain, it was not severe enough. It would be fine after a night's sleep. Miss, you can pestle again tomorrow. You didn't do it all at once in the past, did you? Qing Yu really felt distressed for Qin Wanru's hand. The past is the past. I don't have much time now. It's only a few days, so I have to do it faster. Moreover, the medicine this time is different from the previous ones. It's best to do it all at once. Qin Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice. Under the light, uneven shadows fell on her snow-white and tender little face. It was almost a clear feeling. Her skin was like snow, crystal clear. Qing Yu, go to sleep if you're sleepy. I'll pestle again. Qin Wanru looked up at Qing Yu and smiled. I'm not sleepy. I'll stay here with you. If you don't sleep, I won't sleep either. Qing Yu almost said angrily. After thinking for a while, she went to the inner room and took out some ointment. She was going to apply the ointment to her miss after Qin Wanru was done pestling, so that her hand would not swell tomorrow. Qin Yu, I don't need it. I just want my hand to swell a little. Seeing the ointment in Qin Yu's hand and her angry face, Qin Wanru smiled. Her pair of eyes were pure and her smile was even more innocent. It made people realize once again that she was just a child. However, the meaning of her words shocked Qin Yu. Miss, what do you want to do? What if your hand is really swollen? Old grandma will be distressed to see it. So, I won't go to see grandma tomorrow morning. I'll just say that I was scared by Qi Rongji today and didn't sleep well last night. I'll get up late tomorrow morning. You can go to grandma and apologize. Qin Wanru lowered her head and looked at her slender little hand. The red mark on her hand that was holding the medicine pestle became more and more obvious. It could even be considered as hideous. Her hand was very swollen and painful. But it was really nothing compared to the punishment of being cut in half at the waist. The smile on her lips became more and more brilliant. She could be cruel to herself. But miss, your hand. Qin Yu felt her heart was also aching. Her miss's little hand was so swollen. It doesn't matter. Now help me to sleep. Qin Wanru stood up and looked at the unfinished medicine powder. She felt that it was almost time. Should I put it away? Qin Yu looked at the two small pieces of medicine powder and asked in confusion. No need, just leave it like this. Qin Wanru was very satisfied with her work. It was indeed not the best finished product, but for her, it was the best. With the strength of a child, this was already the best. The next morning, Qin Yu went to apologize to old grandma on behalf of Qin Wanru. When Qin Wanru got up, Qin Yu had already returned. After helping Qin Wanru freshen up, her eyes fell on Qin Wanru's hand. After a night's sleep, Qin Yu didn't feel much better. She even felt that her hands were more swollen. Both of her hands were swollen. Even when Qin Wanru ate, it was not convenient for her to hold chopsticks and pick up food. Qin Wanru put down the chopsticks in her hand and asked Qin Yu for a spoon. She directly ate some porridge. After eating a bowl of porridge, Qin Wanru stood up and asked Qin Yu to wrap the stone mortar together with the medicine powder in it. She carried it to Mingqiu Nun's place. When she arrived at the hut at the foot of the mountain, Mingqiu Nun had already stood up and was doing her morning lesson. Qin Wanru knelt on the rush cushion and waited quietly with her eyes closed. Although Mingqiu Nun was also a nun of Jingxin Monastery, she basically did her morning lesson alone. She seldom did it with other nuns of the monastery. Moreover, most of the master of Jingxin Monastery claimed that her junior sister was not in the monastery. Mingqiu Nun was a quiet person and did not want others to disturb her. She was just the master of Jingxin Monastery. When faced with a difficult illness, she would help to treat it when there was no other way. Even if she helped to treat the illness, she was only using the identity of an ordinary nun in Jingxin Monastery. Even if some patients were cured, they thought that the master of Jingxin Monastery was busy, so they called a nun who followed her to treat patients. Because of this, many people only knew the master of Jingxin Monastery but not Mingqiu Nun. Finally, Mingqiu Nun finished her morning lesson and slowly opened her eyes. Why did you come so early today? Don't you want to see old Madam Qin? Qin Wanru usually went to see and accompany old Madam Qin at this time. My hand is swollen. Qin Wanru pouted her cherry lips slightly and said with a little childishness, I am afraid that grandmother will feel distressed if she sees it, so I don't want to go. Why is it swollen? After getting along with her for a few days, Mingqiu Nun liked her clever and well-behaved apprentice very much. Hearing that her hand was swollen, she could not help but look at her hand kindly. Qin Wanru hid her hand in her sleeve. Hearing Mingqiu Nun's question, she did not rush to show it. She smiled and said to Qin Yu, give me the medicine powder. Qin Yu respectfully took out the stone mortar wrapped in the bag. More than half of it was the medicine powder of the stone mortar. It seemed that the medicine powder inside was a little coarse and rough. Mingqiu Nun's face darkened and she scolded, "Wanru, what did I tell you? These medicines are related to the patient's health and you can't be careless. How could you make the medicine powder like this? Look, there are some finished medicines here. How can the patient take it? Or even if the medicine is taken, the effect is not good and can't reach the expected effect of treatment. It may even delay the patient's condition." Qin Wanru lowered her head and nodded respectfully without any disobedience. "Yes, Nun, I will use more strength next time." Speaking of using strength, Mingqiu Nun's eyes fell on Qin Wanru's hand. Her words made her heart jump and she thought of what Qin Wanru said just now. "Give me your hand," Mingqiu Nun said in a low and slow voice. Qin Wanru hesitated for a moment, but she still slowly stretched out her hand, although she looked a little reluctant. Her hanging sleeves were rolled up. Seeing the red and swollen white and tender hands, Mingqiu Nun couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. She reached out to hold Qin Wanru's hand and pressed her thumb on the swollen part of Qin Wanru's hand. "Ah, Nun, it hurts." Qin Wanru looked at Mingqiu Nun with tears in her eyes. She immediately felt so painful that hot sweat appeared on her forehead. "It was really painful. You peeled the medicine?" Looking at the position of the two red marks, Mingqiu Nun asked ambiguously. "Yes, I peeled it. My father said that he would go to the capital city in a few days. I thought that the medicine powder that you asked me to do hasn't been peeled well, so I happened to take the opportunity when my mother sent the medicine to Grandma. I wanted to do it quickly, but I didn't expect that I didn't do it well. Please forgive me, Nun." Qin Wanru lowered her head and pretended to be embarrassed. It turned out that it was not that she didn't care about the medicine, but that she was too small and couldn't use much strength. She also wanted to do it all at once, so she blamed her wrongly. Mingqiu Nun's face softened, and her voice unconsciously softened. "Why are you so careless? Next time, I will ask someone to do it for you. Besides, you don't have to be so anxious." Chapter 98. "Yes, my father said it yesterday. I'm afraid of delaying your business, so I want to finish what you asked me to do as soon as possible." Qin Wanru lowered her head and said respectfully. She reached out and pushed the powder in the stone mortar to Mingqiu Nun for her to check. Just now, she just looked at it. Next, she would use smell and taste to analyze whether Qin Wanru's powder was good or not. With Mingqiu Nun's medical skills, she could immediately taste the quality of Qingxiu grass as long as it was in the first grade. She needed Mingqiu Nun to worry about her. Mingqiu Nun's hand touched the stone mortar that Qin Wanru pushed over, but she didn't taste it immediately. She looked a little stunned, slightly lowered her head, and didn't speak. The room suddenly became quiet, and there was only the sound of the wind outside the room. "Nun?" Qin Wanru paused and called her worriedly. She didn't understand why Mingqiu Nun reacted like this. "You want to go to the capital city, so you don't study medicine?" Mingqiu Nun seemed to be awakened by Qin Wanru's call. She raised her head and showed a gentle smile on her face. However, this smile was a little bitter in Qin Wanru's eyes. "I want to study medicine, Nun, I want to study medicine," Qin Wanru said eagerly. She grabbed Mingqiu Nun's clothes with her red and swollen little hands, and raised her watery eyes, which were bright and firm, without any wavering. "In fact, you have almost learned it. I have a medical book here, which I compiled according to the actual cases. You can take it with you when the time comes. In fact, I wanted to take you out for a walk. In fact, I also wanted to take you out to see patients. What you lack now is some practical experience." Mingqiu Nun took a deep breath and said slowly. Her soft eyes slid over Qin Wanru's pink little face. She really didn't expect her disciple to be so talented. Moreover, she could draw inferences about other cases from one case, and even put forward some new opinions. What she lacked was just practical experience. Qin Wanru was overjoyed. Then can you go to the capital city with me? Mingqiu Nun shook her head and directly refused. I won't go to the capital city. I have an appointment with someone, and I won't go to the capital city. Nun, why? Qin Wanru's bright watery eyes widened and she asked in surprise. This can be regarded as some old grievances. In fact, it's all in the past now. I just don't want to go there. Mingqiu Nun shook her head and said in a soft and light voice. These words seemed to be said to Qin Wanru, but also seemed to be said to herself. What can't you let go of? And it has something to do with the capital city? Qin Wanru was stunned for a moment, with dark light flowing in her eyes. It's not a big deal. It's been so long. I'm afraid I've already let it go. Mingqiu Nun smiled with a bit of self-mockery, which was different from her usual behavior. In the past, Mingqiu Nun had always been gentle and solemn. Since she accepted Qin Wanru as her disciple, she had been very kind to Qin Wanru. She was an aloof elder, well-behaved and polite, and had never lost her composure in front of Qin Wanru. But now, Qin Wanru keenly felt that she had lost her composure. Since you have let go of it, why not go to the capital city? Wanru can also accompany you and show filial piety to you. Qin Wanru probed carefully. She really wanted Mingqiu Nun to go to the capital city with her. She and Mingqiu Nun were not master and disciple in name, but they were actually master and disciple. She really wanted to show filial piety to Mingqiu Nun. Originally, she didn't dare to think that Mingqiu Nun would go to the capital city with her. But since Mingqiu Nun had the idea to take her out before, she might be willing to go to the capital city with her. Although Qin Wanru knew that her idea was actually not reliable, she still raised her watery eyes with uncontrollable excitement and looked at Mingqiu Nun with childish admiration and longing. You child. Mingqiu Nun seemed to be moved by the childish admiration in Qin Wanru's eyes. A smile appeared on her face and broke the bitterness just now. She reached out and touched Qin Wanru's head. I won't go with you. The capital city is too noisy and not suitable for my temperament. It's quieter here. Speaking of this, Mingqiu Nun couldn't help but think of that person. That person should have married and had children now, right? For so many years, she had also converted to Buddhism. At this moment, her heart was really shaken. Sure enough, as senior sister said, her heart was not calm. Therefore, she couldn't go to the capital city. What happened in the past had already passed. Let the past be gone with the wind. Picking up the stone mortar at hand, she reached out to pinch a little powder and tasted it on the tip of her tongue. Suddenly, her face changed. Qingxiu grass. Didn't your grandmother not experience the taste of Qingxiu grass? Although it was the master of Jingxin Monastery who treated Madame Dowager, she still had to ask Mingqiu Nun about some medicine. Mingqiu Nun was also very clear about Madame Dowager's condition. How could it be? My mother brought it to me when she went down the mountain to deliver medicine for my grandmother. How could it have the taste of Qingxiu grass? Mingqiu Nun's words didn't surprise Qin Wanru, but she still pretended to be surprised. It's very light, but it's still there. If your grandmother keeps smelling it, her condition will worsen. Mingqiu Nun reached out to pinch a little more and tasted it. Then she raised her head and said with certainty. The medicine sent here has been tampered with. Someone deliberately sprinkled the powder of Qingxiu grass in the medicine. Then, Qin Wanru lowered her head. She looked a little weak. Her red and swollen little hands pinched the corner of her clothes, looking a little pitiful. Her pink and delicate little hands were swollen with two big red patches. Her hands looked like a pair of bulging red buns, which really made people feel sorry for her. Take Yujie away. Thinking for a moment, Mingqiu Nun said slowly. Yujie Nun. Qin Wanru raised her head, and her face was full of surprise. Yujie nun was also a nun in Jingshin Monastery, but she cultivated with her hair. She was an orphan who grew up in Jingshin Monastery. She usually took care of Mingqiu nun's meals and learned medicine from Mingqiu nun. She could be regarded as a good assistant of Mingqiu nun. Yujie is actually not a nun. She only cultivated with her hair. Senior sister said she had no fate with Buddhism, so she originally wanted to send her down the mountain. Mingqiu nun sighed. She was also a person who watched Yujie grow up. In fact, she also wanted to keep this child by her side. But she also knew that Yujie was young after all. Although she was more than stable, she actually didn't match this monastery. Mingqiu nun and the master of Jingshin Monastery didn't want to directly lock such a young child in the monastery for a lifetime. If Qin Wanru didn't happen to go up the mountain to study medicine, Yujie would have been sent away. Because of Qin Wanru's presence, Mingqiu nun also had a little selfishness. She wanted Yujie to follow Qin Wanru. Yujie had been on the mountain for so many years. Although she was smart, she had no background. If Qin Wanru took care of her, it would be easier for her to blend in. This was also the reason why Mingqiu nun asked Qin Wanru to contact Yujie more recently. Both of them were children she liked, and she hoped that they could be closer. Can Yujie nun really go with me? Qin Wanru opened her watery eyes wide, and she was so excited that her small body couldn't help sitting up straight. It could be seen that she was really happy. Mingqiu nun breathed a sigh of relief. She was embarrassed to ask, but seeing that Qin Wanru didn't pestle the medicine well, and she didn't even distinguish the smell of Qingxiu grass, she was worried, so she asked. Now seeing Qin Wanru's surprised face, she was also relieved. These two children didn't force each other. It was best that they could take care of each other in harmony. I can go with you, Mingqiu nun said with a smile. After a pause, she said, just take her as your servant girl and take her down the mountain. In the future, let her pestle the medicine. After all, you are too young and have no strength. Compared with Yujie who had been pestling the medicine and could be regarded as a Hercules in the nunnery, Qin Wanru's strength was too small. As for being a servant girl, Mingqiu nun also thought about it very clearly. She had also discussed with the master of Jingshin Monastery before. Since she and Qin Wanru only had the real relationship of master and apprentice, without the title of master and apprentice, Yujie naturally couldn't be regarded as Qin Wanru's senior sister. Without this relationship, Yujie didn't have a foothold in General's mansion. Being Qin Wanru's servant girl was the best way. When Qin Wanru saw Yujie nun easily lift a fish tank in the nunnery, she clearly knew that she needed such a person. And this time, it was also because of her. But she was still a little worried and asked carefully, does Yujie nun know about it? I have mentioned it to her before, but originally it was me who took you to travel, and she was your servant girl. After all, your servant girl followed you, and I'm afraid that she wouldn't be able to bear so much hardship. Mingqiu nun's eyes fell on Qingyu. Although Qingyu was a servant girl, the principal servant girl of General's mansion was also delicate and tender. How could she bear so much hardship? If she really took Qin Wanru to travel, this servant girl was really not enough. Thank you, nun. Seeing that Mingqiu nun had the same idea as her, Qin Wanru knelt straight and respectfully bowed to Mingqiu nun 3 times. Then she raised her head, and her eyes were slightly red. She was really moved. In the last life, she missed the opportunity to learn medicine from Mingqiu nun, so she also missed this elder who cared about her wholeheartedly. In this life, she finally found this elder who cared about her sincerely. She originally thought highly of Yujie nun, but she found that her master had already prepared for her. Even if Qin Wanru was clever, she couldn't help but feel really sad at this time. Good girl, don't cry. I can rest assured if you are with Yujie. Looking at the child's childish expression, it diluted the bitterness in Mingqiu nun's heart. She couldn't help but show a kind smile, which made her beautiful eyebrows more shiny. Nun, don't worry. We will meet again in the future. Yujie Nun and I will definitely come to see you. A trace of darkness flashed in Qin Wanru's eyes. This was her promise to Mingxiu Nun. In a few words, she had already understood that Mingxiu Nun had a knot in her heart, and this knot was still in the capital city. She would definitely find a way to solve the knot in Mingxiu Nun's heart and bring Mingxiu Nun to the capital city one day. Chapter 99. When Qin Wanru returned to Madame Dowager's courtyard, Yujie, who was dressed as a servant girl, was already beside her. The clothes that Yujie was wearing belonged to Qingyue. Their height and looks were about the same, so Yujie was wearing Qingyue's clothes. After taking off her nun clothes and hat, Yujie really looked like a well-mannered maid from an aristocratic family. Her words and actions were well-behaved, and she didn't look out of place at all. Madame Dowager was in a good mood when she saw Yujie Nun dressed like this, fair and delicate. On the one hand, she felt that Mingxiu Nun and the abbess of Jingxin Monastery had really put in a lot of effort. On the other hand, she felt that Mingxiu Nun had grown up in the monastery. She looked dignified and decent and was not impetuous like her age. She would be a good assistant to Zhuozhuo in the future. Since then, it was confirmed that Yujie would also follow Qin Wanru and become a principal servant girl of Qin Wanru. She also went down the mountain with Qin Wanru. On the day he left the mountain, the master of Jingxin Monastery and Mingxiu Nun came to see him off. Qin Wanru and Yujie bid farewell to them respectfully and got on the carriage together. The carriage went all the way down to the general's mansion. Junior sister, you really don't have to care so much. It has been so many years, maybe he doesn't care anymore. You don't have to suffer like this. Seeing the carriage of the general's mansion leaving, the master of Jingxin Monastery turned to look at her junior sister and said softly. It's all in the past. It's been so long, what's the point of thinking about it? Senior sister, I'm very good now, quiet and peaceful. Isn't that how I live my life without being disturbed? Mingxiu Nun turned around and said softly in a low voice. Her delicate face was calm and gentle, and it could not be seen that she cared about it at all. The nun of Jingxin Nunnery opened her mouth. She didn't know whether she should mention the powder on Qin Wanru's body or not. But looking at Mingxiu Nun's peaceful face, which was almost like that of an old monk in nirvana, she couldn't help but sigh and didn't persuade her anymore. She didn't know if she should say yes or not. If she really let it go, why should she be so obsessed with going or not going? But there were some things, even though she was the senior sister, she could not advise too much. He just wanted to comfort his junior sister's heart so that she could live a peaceful life. I don't know. Maybe it's also a kind of happiness. When Qin Wanru and Madame Dowager returned to the general's mansion, Shui Rulan had already led some people to wait at the parking place of the general's mansion. Seeing Madame Dowager's carriage coming over, she hurried forward and helped Madame Dowager get off the carriage with Nanny Duan. Madame Dowager had recuperated well in Jingxin Monastery these days, and she seemed to be in good spirits. It's totally not enough for the people in such a big mansion to eat and use. Madame Dowager frowned and shook her head, denying. The general's mansion had many industries in Jiangzhou, including many shops. But these were all controlled by Madame D, and she had no intention of letting them out. Grandma, are you going to sell all the shops? Looking at Madame Dowager and Shui Rulan's faces, Qin Wanru also knew that this matter was very difficult to handle. Moreover, Shui Rulan should have gone to ask Madame D, and she might have been rejected, so she seemed to be at a loss. Of course, I'm going to sell all of them. Staying here will not only lock up the financial resources, but also leave some competent people here. It's not very cost-effective. Madame Dowager nodded, also very worried. Can you let Madame stay here? Qin Wanru looked at the teacup in her hand, and her long curly eyelashes flickered slightly. Let Madame stay here. That's definitely not possible. Not to mention others, Duke Yong's mansion in the capital city will definitely not agree. Madame Dowager shook her head repeatedly. There was no need to ask, it was definitely not possible. Qin Huayong had just arrived in the capital city and had no foundation, so he definitely needed the support of Duke Yong's mansion. Moreover, it was impossible for him to return to Jiangzhou, so it was not appropriate to let Madame D, the legal wife, stay here. Then, send Madame back to her hometown. Qin Wanru raised her eyes and said with a smile. The somewhat sweet smile on her face was very flexible. Her hometown is not in Jiangzhou. If she wants to leave Jiangzhou, Madame has to sell the shops, right? Madame Dowager didn't understand for a moment, and was stunned for a moment. It's not appropriate for her to stay in her hometown. Her maiden family is Duke Yong's mansion. But Shui Rulan's eyes lit up, and she turned back to look at Qin Wanru with a smile. Mother, what Wanru said is reasonable. We can say this deliberately, and then sister will definitely not agree. She will want to leave early, and automatically sell the shops. This time, Qin Wanru smiled slightly, like a smart and well-behaved little girl, and didn't answer. At this point, it was enough for Shui Rulan to understand. After all, she was just a child, and sometimes she shouldn't stand out too much. She didn't want her relatives to look at her as if she was a monster. If she sells the shops, the money can only be in her hands. I'm afraid it's impossible to dig money out of her hands. Madame Dowager shook her head, glanced at Qin Wanru, and said, Zhuozhuo is after all a child, and she doesn't think it through. However, although she was a child, she was a smart child. Although the matter had not been resolved, old Madame still felt very satisfied with her granddaughter. In another 2 or 3 years, when she was a little older, she would be able to stand on her own. Old Madame felt very gratified that her granddaughter was so intelligent that she was not inferior to the young ladies of those aristocratic families. She had raised her granddaughter, who was so intelligent that she was not inferior to the young ladies of those aristocratic families. Mother, you still don't understand what I said. Shui Rulan laughed, and now she thought of something else according to Qin Wanru's imperfect words. Sister is now locked up, and can't go out to find people by herself. She must find Nanny Zhou who works for her to sell the shops. There were many people around Madame D, but the most useful one should be Nanny Zhou, who she brought from the capital city. Nanny Zhou was not only old, but also knowledgeable, and a very good helper. Moreover, because Nanny Zhou's foundation was also in the capital city of Duke Yong's mansion, Madame D trusted her more. So, Madame Dowager heard something from her words. If she sells the shop and the general asks for money from her, do you think that she, as a servant, would dare to refuse to pay? Shui Rulan said with a smile. If the general's mansion took back the money from these shops, they didn't need to worry about the money to buy new shops and some necessary customers after they went to the capital city. There are so many shops, and the time when the money will be paid is uncertain. If Madame D knows that Huai has taken the money, she may fight with Huai and next time, she won't give Huai a chance to take the money from Nanny Zhou. She will give Nanny Zhou a death order, and even ask Nanny Zhou to protect the money. It's not good to have a head-on conflict for money. Madame Dowager still felt it was inappropriate. If Madame D made up her mind to make trouble, and the whole Jiangzhou prefecture knew about it, the general's mansion couldn't afford to lose face. In the past, Madame Dowager was sure that Madame D would not do this because she cared about her reputation, but now she was really not so sure. Would Madame D guard the money tightly after the money was taken, and would ask Nanny Zhou to protect the money desperately? Nanny Zhou still had family in Duke Yong's mansion, and she would definitely listen to Madame D. If she really guarded the money desperately, no one could do anything to her. If she really forced someone to die for money, it would not sound good. Moreover, Shui Rulan had just married into the general's mansion. If Madame D used this reason, Shui Rulan would be at a disadvantage. If Duke Yong's mansion used this to control Qin Huayong after they went to the capital city, the general's mansion could only be at a disadvantage. Shui Rulan didn't know how to answer at the moment. She seemed to think it was okay, but also seemed to think it was not okay, and she didn't grasp the important point at the moment. Grandma, then we only need to ask Nanny Zhou for money once. Qin Wanru blinked her clear watery eyes, and said with a little confusion. Chapter 100. Shui Rulan's eyes suddenly widened, and a smile appeared on her face. Mother, since there is only one chance, let's get it from Nanny Zhou. Taking one time is at most the price of a shop. It's still not enough. Old grandma still had not figured it out. Mother, keep an eye on Nanny Zhou and find out the person who trades with her. Use a method to make them pay on the same day. Shui Rulan said. Her words also reminded old grandma. She thought for a while and nodded repeatedly, thinking that this method was feasible. Since they could only take the money from Nanny Zhou once when Madame D was not paying attention, they must get all the money and find a way to make Madame D get the money on the same day. After taking the money this time, there was no other money to take. As for the person who asked Jiangzhou Prefecture to sell Madame D's shop, it was not a big problem for Ningyuan Army General's mansion to ask the housekeeper to tell them the money on the same day. If Ningyuan Army General's mansion wanted to sell the shop, other people would not lower the price too much. It was easy to find the customer, and the price was easy to offer. The possibility of a successful transaction was also high. Grandma, do you still have some receipts from that year? It would be great if we keep them. At least there is a witness when Madame asks. Qin Wanru tilted her head and asked childishly. Rulan, you go with Nanny Duan to find some evidence. With a smile on her face, Madame Dowager looked at Qin Wanru thoughtfully and nodded to make arrangements. Shui Rulan and Nanny Duan answered together. Qin Wanru sat with them for a while and then came out of old grandma's yard. But she did not return to her own yard. Instead, she came to the swing near the wall and sat down. Qin Yu habitually went to push for her. But Yu Jie gently pushed her, hinting her to move aside. She had always been strong, so let her do it. Qin Yu nodded and stepped aside. Yu Jie went up and pushed the swing. Qin Wanru's body swayed, rising and falling. Yu Jie's strength was much greater than Qin Yu's, and the height she rose was much higher than Qin Yu, even higher than when Qin Wanru jumped over the wall that day. The wind lifted the young girl's figure up high. Under her beautiful black hair, her clear eyes were dark and deep. In her playfulness, there was an absolute beauty and charm that a girl had yet to fully display. The corners of her lips were slightly curled up. Her red lips were enchanting and bright, which made this little girl even more pure and beautiful. In a pavilion adjacent to the general's mansion, two youths were sitting. One was slightly older than the other. Both of them looked extraordinary, and their gorgeous clothes made it clear that they were not from ordinary families. Hey, there's such a cute little beauty in Ningyuan Army General's mansion. The teenager, who looked a little younger, curiously looked at Qin Wanru, who swayed from time to time. He clicked his tongue twice to express his admiration. Then he turned to another teenager with a cold face and said, "Is she the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion?" The cold-faced youth put down the file in his hand, turned to look at it, and then withdrew his gaze. He was not very interested and said, "Ningyuan Army General's mansion only has 2 daughters. This one is so young, so it should be. Could it be the older one? I heard that the older one is very beautiful. Not only did she offend the eldest son of the Jiang magistrate, but she also has an affair with Di Yan. Di Yan likes beauties the most. No matter how I look at it, this little beauty can be called a beauty. When she grows up, she will be a great beauty that can cause the downfall of a country." The younger one seemed to think of something good. He laughed out loud and did not hesitate to let Di Yan down. They had been in Jiangzhou for 2 days, and some things had been clearly inquired about. Speaking of the strange marriage between Ningyuan Army General's mansion and Jiang Magistrate's mansion, the younger one was very interested. This was much more interesting than these messy files. The weather was so good, how could they stay in the mansion all the time? Even the young girls in the boudoir knew how to play on the swing, but they had to stay here. The more they thought about it, the more bored they became. This one looks very young, but it's just a little girl. The cold-faced youth picked up the file in his hand and said uninterestedly. Even if they had good eyesight, they could only vaguely see that it was a young child. It was actually a stretch to say that she was a young girl. Although Ningyuan Army General does not have a son, his 2 daughters are as beautiful as flowers and jade. He is indeed good at giving birth to daughters. Because of the rumors, the younger one was already sure that Qin Yuru was a great beauty. He immediately pinched his chin, leaned against the window, and continued to look outside. He felt quite interested. This swing was not bad. When he returned to his residence, he wanted to set up a few in the backyard of his residence for fun. When the others were free, they could come over and play together. They could even organize a competition or something. Big brother, when are we going back? The younger one felt that these 2 days in Jiangzhou were boring and wanted to go back. He turned around and looked at his big brother, who had a cold look in his eyes, and said impatiently. Tomorrow. The cold-eyed youth put down the file in his hand and pinched his forehead. His expression didn't look too good either. If one looked carefully, it was not that he was born with cold eyes, but that his complexion was not good. In addition, there was only coldness on his face, which made him look a little colder. So soon. That's great. Not looking for Chu Luchan anymore. The younger one turned around and said in surprise. To be honest, there was really nothing fun in Jiangzhou. It was better to go back to the capital city early. I think he has gone back. The gloomy young man leaned back and closed his eyes as he leaned back on the chair. He didn't get much information. It seemed like he had left a long time ago, but it also seemed like he had left in the past few days. It was difficult for anyone to track his whereabouts. That's great. Let's go back to the capital city. There are many opportunities in the capital city. Why did we come to Jiangzhou? Although the younger one was muttering, he seemed to be in a good mood. There was a big smile on his face, and his eyes turned to the figure outside the window. Big brother, I heard that Ningyuan Army General is also going to be transferred back to the capital city. He should be returning to the capital soon. The cold-faced youth nodded and twitched the corner of his mouth. It seemed that he did not know how to smile. The twitching of the corner of his mouth did not look like he was smiling. Will his 2 daughters go back to the capital city together? The young man said happily, his little daughter looks like a lively girl. Not bad. What do you want to do? Ningyuan Army General is someone that father thinks highly of. Don't act rashly. The cold-faced youth warned the younger one. What do I want to do? What else can I do? I just think that this little girl is very interesting. Look at this swing, it's really not bad. The younger one narrowed his eyes. He thought that when he returned to the mansion, his swing should also be the kind that could swing high. That way, it would be a little above the wall, and the clothes would flutter in the wind. It would be very beautiful. He could also match it with a bright red dress. It would look even better when the red dress fluttered in the wind, just like the little girl in front of him. Big brother, do you have a bright red dress? The youth's abrupt words made the big brother unable to react for a moment. After a moment of shock, he turned his head and looked at him. What do you want? I just think that she looks good in a red dress. Look at this girl. Not only is she beautiful, she is also so beautiful in a red dress. She doesn't look gaudy at all. The younger one said with a smile. His eyebrows and eyes were raised, and he had the liveliness of a young man. You don't look as good as Chu Luchan in it. The cold and gloomy youth said impatiently. He stood up and walked to the guard beside him. He handed over the file in his hand and gently ordered him to do something. Seeing that no one paid attention to him, the younger one curled his lips and said that he looked at Qin Wanru's figure. He even snorted unhappily. Chu Luchen, that evildoer, looked good in whatever he wore. In fact, it wasn't just red clothes. However, Chu Luchen, that sickly and arrogant guy, really had a few red clothes. He didn't know how a guy with such a pale face and pale lips could make a red dress look so different. What he hated the most were those young ladies from aristocratic families. They were all shy when they saw him. They never thought that Chu Luchen would die at any time. They might be widowed before they married him. What was the point of marrying him? They really had no taste. Big brother, I have nothing to do. I'm going out for a walk. Anyway, we are leaving tomorrow. Even if someone finds out and suspects us, it's too late to investigate. The younger one raised his voice. He had been accompanying his big brother here since yesterday. The more he thought about it, the more bored he became. Although there was nothing fun in Jiangzhou, he still had to take a look. Otherwise, it would be a wasted trip. There's nothing fun in Jiangzhou. The cold and gloomy youth said. Big brother, I'm just going out for a walk. I'll be back soon. Maybe there will be a surprise. The young man knew that his elder brother would say that, so he winked and giggled, looking like a rascal. There's nothing fun in Jiangzhou. Big brother, I just came out for a walk. Is it easy? Just let me go out for a while. Don't take too long. The cold and gloomy youth was impatient. He rubbed his forehead and reminded his big brother. Yes, yes, yes. Big brother, don't worry. I'll be back soon. The young one came down from the window and quickly went downstairs. It was not easy for his big brother to agree. He had to hurry up. His big brother might not let him go later. Qin Wanru didn't know that she was being peeped. She was still thinking about what happened just now. Her body swung high. When she fell down, she was very calm. Her mother and grandmother had a good discussion just now. However, Qin Wanru felt that some details should be strengthened. So when the swing fell down again, Qin Wanru said, Yujie, don't push me. I have something to tell you. Yujie's hand stopped. Miss, what do you want me to do? She quickly got into her role. She had no resistance to being a servant girl and following Qin Wanru. For a girl like her, if she left Jingxin Monastery directly, it would be very difficult to do anything. It would be best if she could rely on a rich family. Moreover, during these days in Jingxin Monastery, Yujie admired this second Miss Qin who was younger than her. Not only in terms of medical skills, but also in terms of social behavior. She was very happy to follow Qin Wanru. What she signed was not a death contract. If she had the ability in the future and wanted to leave, Qin Wanru would have already agreed to let her go. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.